It'll be
however you wanna
fine.
do it.
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah, we're
fine.
fine.
The natural conversation I feel is a better vibe. But go ahead and start. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Ball Nowhere Podcast Team Preview Series. I'm your host, as always, David Miller. Joined, we'll go right to left here. So we've got my boy Jarett to my right, Lucas up in the top right, and then of course right above me, the man himself, Rishab, aka DaWindyCity Productions. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing great, man. Just a pleasure to be on here. And David, real fast, I got a little bone to pick with you, my friend,
Oh
because I was
no.
listening to your Packers podcast. It was great, and everything. I just wanted to get a feel for how it goes.
Right.
And you mentioned that the receiver group was kind of more shallow just because Devontae Adams left and everything. And you let them tell you that the Bears were on the same level as them. And I was like, man, how are
Well,
you going to disrespect my boy Darnell Mooney like that,
well, I mean, outside of Mooney, are they wrong?
No, definitely not. But I mean, that puts us a little bit over. I
Yeah,
listen and I'm like,
yeah.
damn, they really got my boy like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just didn't think they were that far off to really, sit and die on that hill or anything like that.
Yeah,
But
that's fair. Yeah.
is that where we want to start?
I don't know.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like I'm higher on Mooney than most people are. Like, I'm not saying he's like an elite top 10 receiver or anything, but I think he's a solid number one, and I don't think Green Bay has a solid number one, depending on, Christian Watson maybe eventually. But I think just Mooney alone puts us a little bit ahead of Green Bay.
I can get behind that. Yeah, I can definitely get behind that.
I was going to say, Christian Watson, didn't he lead college football in drops? Yeah. I don't know, something like in like the top 5 most drops. And like all of a sudden when the Packers drafted him, nobody talked about that anymore. So
yeah.
I will say with Watson, like I kind of I don't watch a whole lot of college football nearly as much as I should. I kind of get into it around draft season. That's when I watch my film and stuff. Christian Watson was one of like my draft crushes this year, and I was really hoping he would go to Chicago. To see him go to Green Bay, it's kind of like that little bit of bias where you're like, oh, I didn't think he was that good anyways. So
right,
it's
exactly.
Fine,
yeah.
I'm glad you said it how it was, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, I love Christian Watson. I hope he puts on a Bears uniform." But then he goes to Packers, and then everyone's like, "Oh, he was never that good. He had flaws." So I'm glad you're keeping it a buck and you're calling it how it is.
And
yeah, I am a part of like another podcast group, and I'm the only Bears fan, so I have to be as non-biased as possible. So I feel like I do a pretty dang good job at it.
That's fair. I respect it. See, when it comes to Watson with me personally, I don't, at least with wide receiver prospects, I don't view drops as like the end-all be-all for them. Like Watson has everything else going for him. If he's got a concentration drop issue, you can coach that out of him. We've seen that happen with guys. Mooney has a bit of a drop problem. I would go as far to say that's like his biggest weakness. And, Luke Getsy coming over, who has worked with receivers in the past that have had really bad drop issues, is going to be big for him. But I don't think that's going to be the end-all be-all for Watson or anything like that. I think he'll be a fine receiver, unfortunately. But do we want to start there? We want to start talking about the receivers, since I kind of brought that up right away.
Sure, let's go into it.
All right, you guys go ahead. Give me your thoughts. I talk about my thoughts enough on here. You guys go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess the Bears receivers, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say. Yeah, so obviously, if you look around our receiving core right now, it doesn't on paper we don't have many proven things, right? Like we have Darnell Mooney. Obviously, a lot of us view him as a top, as a number one receiver. It's debatable if he actually is at this point, right? Because he only has one season of actual big time production. And so we'll see if he can keep that up into next year. But I think personally he can. If you look at his separation stats last year, they're great. He was by far, our best receiver out there. Allen Robinson was not even, when he was on the field, he wasn't being utilized that much. And even when he was, he wasn't really, seemed like he wasn't trying as hard. So, Mooney, I'm very high on. Then after that, it's kind of a bunch of unknowns, right? We have Byron Pringle, who was a number 4 receiver for the Chiefs. We have Velus Jones, our draft pick. And then besides those three, it's even more unknown. So I think there is potential in this group. If Byron Pringle, for example, can put together 700, 800 yards, I'm sure every Bears fan will be okay with that. If Velus Jones,
that'd be a dream. Yeah,
that would be amazing. And I think that's possible too, right? Because there was a bunch of big plays he made last year. He's definitely going to be like a number 2, number 3 for us. And we don't have a solid X right now. Could he be the X? I mean, he's not the biggest, obviously, but I could see him maybe fitting into that role. And then it just depends like how fast Velus Jones is going to get up to speed with the NFL. He is 25, so he's already like up there in age. He's already like kind of experienced. So I don't know. It's again on paper, it's not a great receiving core, but I think he has more potential than people are talking about right now.
Yeah, definitely, completely agree. And I think, with Velus Jones having a little bit more of that experience with the special teams as well, being a kick returner and things like that, I think that will kind of help him get up to speed as well. Because I kind of view him as the Jakeem Grant replacement more than being a consistent contributor on the field right away. I think that's going to help him kind of develop to that NFL speed. And I think that's just a great way to do it. And to your point earlier about, Darnell Mooney kind of having like the drop issue and he's not totally defined himself yet. I think a lot of people, who are not hardcore Bears fans like us four here, a lot of people are going to see that there's a lot of players on the Bears right now that have not gotten the limelight just because they're not putting up the stats and you're not seeing us on Monday Night Football putting up these big plays or Sunday Night Football. Like I know David Montgomery is very underrated. Darnell Mooney's the same way. And I know we're going to get into Justin later. So I think, a lot of that stuff was a lot of like kind of like a separation of coaching with Matt Nagy and not catering to the player's ability. So I think hopefully with Matt Eberflus's more, stringent and concentrated coaching style, I think that's going to bring a lot of the best out of our skill players.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, kind of like I was saying with Watson, drop issues are one of the more coachable things. And God knows nobody was getting coached under Matt Nagy. It was a mess. And I think definitely we're in a lot better position now, specifically because of Luke Getsy. I'm very, very high on Luke Getsy. That, like you said, a lot of these offensive skill players are now going to be in a position where they're working with somebody who knows what they're doing, can put them in a position to where they're playing the best role that they can or the role that fits their abilities the best. Like we might see an offense that isn't necessarily fitting to the status quo, so to speak, with an X, Y, and a Z. We might see, I know that's kind of weird to say, I don't know a better way to put it, but like, you're right, we don't have a true X guy on this roster, but there are guys that are capable of making plays. Byron Pringle can make plays. He just wasn't getting the targets or the production in Kansas City, and that will change in Chicago, and hopefully he can have 600, 700, 800 yards this year. And Velus Jones Jr., I kind of agree with Lucas. He's more like a Jakeem Grant replacement than a solidified member, like top 3 receiver for our receiver core. But he brings that run after catch ability, which is something we struggled with big time last year. We were like bottom 3 in the league in yards after catch, and that's something that he excels at. And then obviously Mooney is Mooney, and we were all hoping he becomes like Terry McLaurin 2.0, has that type of big year, which is definitely possible if he gets the targets and if he can get the production that he needs, which, in this offense is probably likely. And then on top of that, obviously the run game is going to be great because David Montgomery's great and Khalil Herbert looked great last year. And I have no worries about that whatsoever.
Yeah, kind of just to piggyback off of what everyone else said. I do think that this team, like the in my notes, the word I have written down the most is potential. Like this team might not be anything special, but with the potential that we have, it's a bunch of young people, kind of unproven, haven't got their time to shine. I think that is the big like point that I'm going to keep going after is potential. Mooney, he was a 5th round pick. So obviously he wasn't like that highly respected going into the draft. And then he had a pretty good start to his career. And then last year was basically the only receiver on the team. Allen Robinson checked out like week 3, did literally nothing. I don't hate Damiere Byrd or like Marquise Goodwin or anything, but the way our offense was ran did not help them out whatsoever. As you mentioned, we were like bottom of the league in yards after catch, which I'm not going to completely blame the receivers on that. Unless you're a Bears fan, you don't realize how bad of a coach Matt Nagy was. I have seen more hitch routes this last season than I ever needed to see in my entire life. That was like the only route they ever ran. Watching them run like 5 yards and then just turning around on 3rd and long every single drive was the most annoying thing I've ever seen. I think, like, Getsy, I may not be as high on as you. I do like him a lot, and obviously coming from Green Bay, I hate them with a passion. But they have, quote, owned us for quite a while. Their offense is always very good. Yes, they do have an elite quarterback. But with that being said, I think if he carries over anything kind of offense from Green Bay, it'll help quite a lot. I think that maybe the passing won't be like elite or anything. I think it'll be solid, but I will say the running, I think, is going to be where we're going to shine the most. I might be a little biased here. I think we have one of the best running back rooms in the league. I really like Montgomery, and I really like Herbert.
Yeah.
Very underrated addition this offseason. I really like Treston Ebner out of Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
I probably like him more than anyone else in the entire world. I'm a huge fan of his, and I think he's going to step up as that receiving back very, very nicely.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, talking about the running backs, I'm a big fan of Darrington Evans as well, who we also picked up in free agency. And mainly because he fits that sort of wide zone scheme that we're going to be transitioning to. And that's why I'm such a big fan of Getsy, is because I love that McVay, Shanahan coaching tree, all those guys I'm just absolutely enamored with. And the type of offense we're going to be running is just a Shanahan style offense that is catered to Justin Fields specifically, which is like beautiful to me. That is a dream come true. And guys like Ebner is going to fit that well, and Evans and Herbert, maybe not Montgomery quite as much, although he does have sort of the vision to be a great one-cut back, which he already is. Our running back room is definitely underrated right now. I would say it's top 10 in the league easily, and I don't think it gets enough credit. I don't think there's a lot of people that are going to agree with that take.
Yeah, completely agree. And speaking of Darrington Evans, I mean, I just love him as a social media personality. Yeah. I mean, do you see the stuff this guy tweets? He's always just like communicating with the fans and like that. I think that's really important for a fan base that's as ravenous as ours, to communicate with us. But yeah, I mean, there's really not much to add to you, David. What you said is completely true. I'm not as, I don't have as much insight into Ebner. I'm just like everyone else. I'm not big into college football, but when we got him, that's when I did the research. When I was at the news station doing Bears articles, that's when I started to look into it. But yeah, he definitely seems like that's the kind of guy that for our offensive blocking scheme as well as Justin Fields would need. Just kind of like that quick receiving back and kind of bail him out when things get really tough. And also Justin Fields is going to add a lot to that running back room. He's going to bring that extra dimension. So that's going to make our running offense, not just the running backs, a lot more lethal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was going to say that's a good point. I was just going to talk about Justin Fields adding to this running back. He's not a running back, obviously, but he's one of the most mobile quarterbacks in the NFL. Last year, even though we didn't have nearly enough design runs for Justin Fields or RPOs or, play action. We didn't do enough of that, obviously, but he still had like 420 rushing yards, right? When we weren't even really trying to run with him. So I think this year, Getsy is definitely going to take advantage of his legs because he is one of the fastest quarterbacks in the NFL. And if you don't do that, you're just, discarding a big part of your potential offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to see a lot of, like you said, designed runs for Fields is going to be huge. Kind of like how Jalen Hurts last year, necessarily wasn't. And I think Fields is a better passer than Hurts. I'll put that out there right away. I think he has the potential to be a better passer. But like we saw a lot of Jalen Hurts getting outside of the pocket and taking off because their pass game wasn't particularly great. And I think Chicago will be in that same type of vein where we're probably going to get a lot more out of the ground game, not just from Montgomery and Herbert, but also from Fields. And, on top of that, that's great to set up bootlegs, which is something that we saw just in the very, very few times he was actually able to run a bootleg. He was very successful. We saw a lot of big plays. And I think that's something that is going to be massive for Chicago's offense next year.
With the point of Fields running, obviously I'm not going to complain if Justin Fields takes off and run. He is a very mobile quarterback, but I like to think of Fields less as like a mobile quarterback than as a great passing quarterback who also has wheels, because you can think of like the mobile ones, like I know he hasn't played like much in a few years, but like Marcus Mariota, I think is more just like a straight mobile quarterback. Jalen Hurts, I'm not a big fan of his. I don't think he has a great arm, but he is very mobile. I think Justin Fields is like more towards the top half of the league in his arm talent, and he just also has the wheels when he needs to. So I'm not like I don't need to see like a bunch of designed runs in my opinion, but like play actions, rolling out of the pocket, and RPOs like you guys said. I think that is something more so I would like to see than just straight up like read options or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not expecting Fields to look like Lamar Jackson next year or anything like that. And maybe Jalen Hurts was a bad comp because they used his legs a little bit more than his arm. But I definitely agree. Fields is a passer first, and that definitely goes unnoticed and underappreciated given the year he had last year under Nagy. He's definitely a pass first quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. But Jalen Hurts isn't a totally terrible comparison because if he could take a jump similar to what he did last year, I think a lot of Bears fans would see that as huge progress. Like Jarett said, it's not like he has the best arm in the world. Justin Fields definitely has more talent there, but Jalen Hurts did shore up a lot of his passing decisions. He shored up his accuracy, and he did that with a running back room that doesn't even come close to what we have in Chicago. So if we're able to complement Justin Fields the right way with the running game, keeping the defense off balance, and then like Jarett said, I agree, we shouldn't just run him to the ground. We should kind of use his legs as an extra asset to his passing arm, and that will free up some secondary breakdowns and things of that nature. But a Jalen Hurts type of leap would be a pretty, I think that would be a win for a lot of Chicago fans.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if we also somehow make the playoffs like the Eagles did, that would be an enormous win.
And they get destroyed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yep.
Yeah, I'd be okay with 9 wins. Even if we get blown out in the playoffs, I do not care. Because obviously a lot of people aren't expecting the Bears to win that many games this year. I don't know what you guys think about the our schedule this year, but I don't know. I think 8 wins is probably like our max as of now. Maybe 8, 9, but that's
I can agree with that.
Yeah, for season predictions, I have it from 7 to 9, so you kind of went smack dab in the middle of that. I don't think we're gonna like blow people out, win like 10 plus games or anything, but I also don't think like what's being predicted a lot around the league is us getting like the number 1 pick, number 2 pick, like 3 wins tops. I think we're gonna be a team that is like not great, not bad, somewhere in the middle, but is at least in every game and isn't getting blown out week after week like we were with Nagy for like half of the season.
Yeah, that's the best part about this. We physically can't get any worse. Even if our record is worse than it was last year, the team's going to look better. It's going to play better. The offense is going to be better. I think it was Jarett was talking about Goodwin and Bird. I definitely think our receiver core has upgraded from last year. That's something I've been very much in the defense of. Like, I think Pringle is better than both of those guys. I think Velus Jones has a higher ceiling than both of those guys. At the very least, the offense is going to look more competent. It might not reflect it in the win column, but it's going to look better. And we're going to be like, oh, okay, there's a vision here. We can run with this, get a couple more pieces around Fields. We have all this money. We have all these draft picks that we can finally use. We're going to have a first round pick again. That's kind of my expectation.
Yeah. And David, if I can jump it off that just real fast, is that I don't know if you were planning to get to this, but we also have to factor in the tight end portion of this too. And a lot of people expect Cole Kmet to make this amazing leap. And I don't know if I'm quite that optimistic. I do really like Kmet. There's a lot of people that don't. But I think that he's going to be an amazing safety blanket. And, he's going to be that Jimmy Graham type guy that Justin Fields relied on last year. Specifically, I'm thinking of that Pittsburgh game where he was making these, dead-on passes to just a big target like that. So I assume you're going to get into the Cole Kmet thing, but I think that's going to be another element where he may not turn a couple of games for us, but in the very least, he's going to save Justin Fields in a lot of situations where everything breaks down.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Kmet personally, and I definitely think he has incredibly high upside. I don't think he gets near the credit he deserves. And, everyone wants to look at the numbers he put up. Again, he was playing in a Matt Nagy system, and at least from what I gathered, maybe you guys got a different opinion, Matt Nagy's system wasn't the friendliest to Kmet or any tight end for that matter. So I think it's kind of unfair to look at him as like, oh, he's all right. I don't think that's quite fair to him. I definitely think, like you said, a safety blanket will be huge for Fields. I'm a firm believer that a good tight end is a young quarterback's best friend for that reason. I think Kmet can fill that role perfectly. And then going forward, he has the ability, we saw it in the Pittsburgh game, to be a downfield threat, make big-time contested catches, maybe get himself open here and there, even though he isn't the greatest separator. I definitely think he has high upside, and I think Kmet can be a stud for this offense going forward.
Yeah, I'm probably just as equally a big Kmet guy as you are. Cole Kmet is probably my favorite player on the team at the moment. I know he definitely doesn't have the stats to back that up. I know he went to Notre Dame. He's a lifelong Chicago Bears fan. Watching him get drafted, like the behind the scenes thing, kind of just like touched my heart a little bit.
One of the best videos, man. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
Which that like already jump started him a lot, and he doesn't had a big part to do with the offense for the like. Again, as David mentioned, Nagy, no one looks good in this offense at all. But Kmet was really solid at a lot of points. And, again, the Notre Dame thing, I low-key like Notre Dame a lot, and Cole Kmet coming from there also helps. But Kmet's stats, other than touchdowns, when the fact that no one on our team scored touchdowns, weren't that bad. He was like top 12 in receptions and yards, I believe.
Yeah.
It could be a little, it's around the 12 range. If you take out the touchdowns, that's not bad, especially with the offense. And I think if he would have been in the red zone more, we would have gotten more touchdowns. But one thing I noticed with our offense is usually when we got to the red zone, we either, couldn't score. But Kmet also was taken out a lot and subbed in, with Jimmy Graham. And basically our entire offensive plan in the red zone was just throw it to Jimmy Graham every time. Yeah. The one play I remember Cole Kmet getting the ball in the red zone was like at the 1, 2, 3 yard line, something like that. And then we ran the ball with Cole Kmet. I don't know if that was last year or the year before, but that was one of the worst play designs I've ever seen in my entire life. Kmet is a big body. He is a very strong player. Yeah. And I think in the red zone is where he should shine. I think he could be like you said, a safety blanket. But I think in the red zone is a place where he'll shine, and we just need to actually utilize him in the red zone. Yeah. The thing with Nagy's offense is I have never seen in all of my years of watching football a coach like play against everyone's strengths so heavily in my entire life.
Yeah, absolutely agree with. First of all, with that last point, Matt Nagy, I've gotten a lot of flack for this from people that aren't Bears fans, and I'll never understand it. But Matt Nagy's offense is basically, look, you're a game manager now. You're going to stand upright in the pocket. You're not allowed to move around. If you move around, you will be murdered. You're going to stand upright in the pocket, and you're going to throw the football 2 yards down the field. And that works when you have Dalton or Foles or whoever the hell else out there at quarterback. But when you have guys like Fields or even Trubisky, that's not the kind of offense you want to work with. That's not playing to their strengths, like you said. And Kmet getting taken out in the red zone all the time. I think Matt Nagy, Jimmy Graham must have had some sort of dirt on Matt Nagy that could have ruined his life for him to use him the way he did in Chicago. It was absolutely ridiculous. And like you said, with Kmet being super strong as well, look back to that Texans game in Mitch's last year. The way he was running through that defense and throwing people off of him, my profile picture on social media for the longest time was that one stiff arm he had. To me, that I saw George Kittle in that game. That was exactly what I saw. And I don't like making big player comparisons. I don't think he has quite the talent that Kittle does, but we can see him used in the same way. And again, it's very fitting because we're running that Shanahan-ish wide zone scheme where he can be used effectively as both a blocker and a pass catcher, which there were games last year where he was the best blocker on the field. And I think that's something that got overlooked a lot. Specifically, I can't remember which Detroit game it was, but the one Detroit game, he was easily the best blocker on the field that entire game. And there were a couple plays in the Browns game where he was going one-on-one with Myles Garrett and kind of held his own. He's a great all-around tight end, but people don't like that he can't separate, so he's a bust or whatever label you want to throw on him.
I was going to say, he's also only 23 years old, right? I think he's only 23 right now. And if you look at the ages of all the other tight ends when they first broke out, Travis Kelce was 24, 25. George Kittle was also a little bit later. Cole Kmet came out really early out of college. He was only 21, I think, when he got drafted. So I'm not trying to say he has the same potential as Kelce, Kittle, obviously, because I don't think he does. I don't think he's going to be a top 3, top 4 star tight end in this league. But, who's to say what his ceiling is right now? Because we still haven't seen a lot of what he's capable of. Like you guys said, in the Matt Nagy offense, basically everybody, their ceiling was capped because our coach didn't want to do stuff that they did the best. So I think that Bears Twitter, Bears fans in general are a little bit, I feel like they overhate Cole Kmet a little bit just because of the high draft pick that we gave to, to select him. Or if Cole Kmet was not a 2nd round pick, it feels like a 5th round pick. I feel like Bears fans will not hate on him that much because they're kind of not expecting him to be, what he's not. So I think it's a big year for Cole Kmet. Obviously, hopefully he has a good year, but I think he's definitely overhated right now among Bears Twitter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I think I have two things to say to that. And the first one is, I wonder if a lot of Bears fans, and aren't us obviously, because we're all big fans of Cole Kmet, I wonder if a lot of Bears fans think that Cole Kmet is going to be that next Adam Shaheen. I wonder if that's what people think. Is because he was so overhyped, like the baby Gronk thing, and then he flamed out, and he was saying all this weird crap over it in Miami. So I wonder if that has left a bitter taste in a lot of Bears fans' mouth, that we can't get that next great tight end like that one Greg Olsen that we used to have. And then the second thing is that there's going to be maybe some people that aren't big Bears fans that are watching this, just want a general overview of what the Bears looking like. And I just want to say, the biggest caveat everyone here is going to say is that without Matt Nagy there, what could have it been? If we had a competent coach that was able to play to our players' strengths, just like David said, then what could have last year's offense looked like? How would have Justin have already progressed? There's a lot of kind of what ifs happening, but that's why a lot of people like us are so optimistic about it, is because Matt Eberflus, by all accounts, just seems like the kind of coach that will bring these guys in and not completely lead them astray and destroy confidence and don't play to strengths like Nagy did. So that's why you hear us always saying, okay, but without Nagy, though, what could his talent be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. Absolutely. There are so many players that have been in and out of this offense that I really do wonder what they would have been had Matt Nagy not ruined their careers or not held them back. Mitch Trubisky's obviously the big one, and Cole Kmet now, Darnell Mooney. I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Everyone we've talked about and some of the guys that have come and gone. It's really interesting to think about what they would have done without Nagy. But, to everyone that isn't a Bears fan, they're going to tell us that we're overhating Nagy and it's just a lack of talent. And Nagy really wasn't that bad, but it's all bullshit. Nagy is probably the worst coach I've ever seen coach ever. It was rough.
If you were not a Bears fan and didn't watch every Bears game religiously, you do not understand how bad of a coach Matt Nagy was.
Infuriating at points, rip your hair out, kind of infuriating.
The Browns game is so sad to watch.
That's what I always think about the Browns game.
That was the dagger. That was really the dagger in his coffin.
It looked like my own son was getting killed out there. That's my soul. No, Justin, no, get away from him. He's an abuser. That's how I felt. No, I'm not kidding you.
There were plays too. I don't know if you guys know who Elite Takes is on TikTok and Twitter. He posted a video and he was talking about his best players of the 2017 draft or whatever year it was. And he showed this clip and it was Nick Bosa against the Bears this past year. And it was literally, he was on an island being blocked by one man. And that one man was Alex Bars. And I just want to know who in their right mind thought, okay, Nick Bosa's here. We're not going to put a tight end there to help Alex Bars. We're not going to double team. We're going to leave Alex Bars one-on-one with Nick Bosa, and that is the best way to protect our quarterback. That's the type of shit that was going on in Chicago last year, yet people want to pretend it's not a Nagy issue. It's a Fields issue. It's a line issue. It's a Chicago issue, whatever it is. Anyone but Nagy. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, also with that 49ers game, I know you guys all remember the iconic Justin Fields scramble for the touchdown at the end. He should have tied the game. Cairo Santos, the best kicker since Robbie Gould, finally he looked so solid the entire year, then misses in the clutchest moment. But that run, it was I'm pretty sure it was a designed Fields run to the right. He takes off running. There's no lineman in front of him. There's the entire 49ers defense just in his face immediately. If Justin Fields wasn't so shifty to break the ankles of 4 defenders just to go to the other side of the field, that would have been a sack on, I think it was 4th down.
Yeah.
The designs, even the plays we did have that were good, weren't well designed. I feel like they were more so just luck. Our offense was it was painful to watch 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And then I will probably move on from the Matt Nagy thing, but just one more thing. If there's someone's coach of the year thing, he could only get hired on as a quality control coach for the Chiefs. He couldn't even get hired on anywhere else. But that's all you need to know. He could not go anywhere else.
Yeah.
2018 was Vic Fangio.
Exactly.
We all know that should
be. Exactly.
Yeah. 100%.
That should have been.
Oh, right.
The only.
Confused me for a second. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
That should have been the only time ever coordinator got Coach of the Year. Right. Yeah. That was completely Vic.
I'm pretty sure our offense. I was pretty sure our offense was still ranked 23rd that year.
It was mediocre.
It wasn't even good, and he was I'm using air quotes, an offensive mastermind, and we were 23rd ranked offense. It was our defense was that good that year, probably one of the best defenses of the decade, and we couldn't win a wild card game.
Yeah, Nagy, I mean, we literally, again, I don't want to keep beating up on Nagy because there's more fun things to talk about, but just to finally bury it, Nagy called like 6 games for the Chiefs in his time with the Chiefs, and those games weren't necessarily impressive. And even then, like looking back on it, I can guarantee you Nagy would have a play drawn up. And when you're doing that, you got to go through the head coach. And I can tell you right now, Andy Reid would be like, "Hey, Matt, how about we call this instead? This might be a better idea here." And it's just Andy Reid kind of holding Nagy's hand. And then once Nagy was let loose, we saw the shit show that ensued. It was just awful. But to move on, keep talking about the offense. The offensive line is probably the position group on this team that I am the most concerned with, even though I will say I'm probably not quite as concerned as like the consensus national media, so to speak, because the way I look at it, we have a bunch of guys who fit the scheme really well, and an offensive line isn't, each guy needs to be great. It's the sum of its parts. If they can work well together, the offensive line can play well. We saw that with the Bengals last year, even though they were like god awful, there were still games where they were able to hold together, or in clutch moments for the most part, they were able to hold together. And that's really all you need the offensive line to do. So I'm curious to see what you guys think about that.
I guess I'll go ahead and start on this one. The offensive line, that is probably the biggest question mark on the whole team. But at the same time, without completely blaming Nagy, I do think that scheme is a big factor in how offensive lines perform. Because I'm comparing us to Green Bay based on the fact we got Luke Getsy from there. I think if you look at Green Bay on paper, their linemen, other than Bakhtiari, which is one of the best tackles in football, other than him, they don't have like any like elite offensive linemen that you can think of, but they just as so well as a unit that it looks terrific, and they have a really good offensive line. I think if we get a scheme that will benefit us, we may not be an elite offensive line due to the talent. I'm not sure. It's big question marks. But we can be a very serviceable offensive line that can protect Justin Fields enough for, in my opinion, to become an elite quarterback. There's some pieces I do like. I really like Larry Boreham. I think he's probably the most underrated offensive lineman on our team. I didn't watch a ton of college, but I did know of Larry Boreham coming out. He was like one of the only tackles in the SEC who didn't allow a sack his entire senior season. Last year, again, our entire offensive line looked kind of rough at points, but his first game was against the Rams. He got subbed in and was basically going one-on-one with Aaron Donald. And he did not look fantastic. But then again, unless you triple team Aaron Donald, no one is going to look fantastic. He kind of held his own. And I don't know how the offensive line is going to look based on the fact that no one does, other than, Lucas Patrick is going to be our center. But I think Larry Boreham would be a good right tackle. I like Lucas Patrick. Cody Whitehair is basically as average as an offensive lineman can get, in my opinion. And then the big questions to me are the left tackle and right guard. Right guard, I have no idea who's going to start there. Tevin Jenkins, I've heard, could be rumored to be there. A lot of people thought he was going to be a guard in the NFL coming out of college. I don't know how he would fit there. Not opposed to it. He was a second-round pick for a reason. For left tackle, I know Braxton Jones has been playing there a lot in OTAs and whatnot. I know literally nothing about him other than the highlights I've seen since he got drafted. So that's a huge question mark. I like him as a biased Bears fan, but I think it's so big of a question mark, I don't trust it whatsoever.
No, I think you just said it exactly how it is. And a big thing for me is that I'm not going to pretend I'm some offensive line guru or anything. I watch the game just like anyone else. But what I do know is that everyone knows about Ryan Pohl's background of being an offensive lineman, and he's kind of that guru that you're looking for. So I just think, looking over the transactions over the last couple of days of the kind of guys that Pohl's is bringing in, he's bringing in a lot of offensive linemen, a lot of defensive linemen. So it seems like to me he's trying to build out those trenches, and I think he and we as well have to accept that it's just going to be serviceable. Justin's going to get in trouble. We're going to get running plays blown up in the hole. But I think we have have pieces like he was just saying, like we have Tevin Jenkins, we have Larry Boreham. Whitehair is serviceable, just like you said. He's not going to be anything special. And for me, I think that Boreham did play well in times. I remember specifically he was inconsistent in some games, but then the next game he would come back and seem like he learned from a lot of those mistakes that he made. So in like I said, the whole Nagy thing. So I'm hoping that that's going to result in some experience for him. And Tevin Jenkins really didn't get any playing time at all. So, but I do know is that he has that dog in him, though. That's what I do know. Everyone remembers that play where someone was jawing with Justin Fields, and Tevin Jenkins was the only guy to run up to him. And I know that sounds like surface level stuff, but it is really important for an offensive lineman to have those capabilities when you're not a top talent. You got to have that little bit of a primal instinct to defend the guy behind you, running back, tight end, quarterback. Like that's like your own child. So I think we have talent there. I think we are just going to be serviceable, but Ryan Poles has not given me any reason not to trust his experience and his talent evaluation. So and unless everything is a dumpster fire, I'm just going to kind of put my hopes with him, and then hopefully we'll improve as a unit as the season goes on.
Yeah, I'm very much with. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You can go ahead.
Okay.
I was just going to say that last year, you guys talked about Ryan Poles being a big scouter of offensive linemen. He was a former offensive lineman, obviously we all know. And last year, the Chiefs, in the 6th round, they took Trey Smith, who basically nobody was high on at the time, and he turned into one of the best guards in the NFL. This year, the Bears drafted like 5 offensive linemen right after round 6. We drafted can't even name them all right now, but we drafted so many people, back there. And the odds are high that at least one of them eventually turns into something good. That might not be at the beginning of the season. That might not even be this season. But eventually, I think one of those guys should hopefully be a capable starter. And obviously, we have a big hole at the right guard spot. Like I have no idea who's going to start at right guard, but there's still talent that's going to be out there after cuts, right after training camp cuts, that I think we can get, right? Because we still have like $23 million to spend this season, which I feel like nobody's talking about that. We still have money to spend, and we're not just going to carry that over into next year, right? Hopefully not, because we still have to improve this team currently. So I think depending on who's available after training camp cuts, there's still, avenues to improve this offensive line, because right now on paper, there's just a lot of question marks. But I do like the potential, like you guys said, of Larry Boreham, Tevin Jenkins. I was super high on Tevin Jenkins going into last year. I wanted him in round 1. We got him in round 2, so I was super pumped about that. But then his back starts to hurt and he doesn't play pretty much the entire year. So hopefully if Tevin stays healthy, he should be a starter somewhere. Larry should also be a starter, but Cody Whitehair average, and aside from that, it's a bunch of question marks. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm a massive Tevin Jenkins fan. Kind of like Rishab said, I wanted him in the first round. I have myself convinced that Chicago was going to take Tevin Jenkins at 20, and then they were going to take Kellen Mond in the second round. That was my dream draft for Chicago right before. And then, we traded up, got Fields. It was like, oh, okay, completely, way better. And then we get Tevin Jenkins in the second round. And I like Jenkins primarily because I think there's a little bit of versatility to him. He can play tackle or he can play guard. It just depends on where he's going to fit in this offense. I think he can be a good tackle, but I think he can be an all-pro guard. And that's mainly because I'm worried about his arm length. That's kind of his one knock. But he's an athletic dude. He's got that mean streak, kind of like Lucas brought up in that Vikings game. I got Kyle Long year 1 vibes when he almost fought somebody over Jay Cutler. In that very moment, I just had the almost like a proud dad. Good Lord, I can't talk. Proud dad moment where I was like, oh my God, okay, there's something here. That's my boy. And, like I said, he can play guard or tackle. He's athletic, he's strong, and he's mean. And that, Ryan Poles has said multiple times, those are his big 3. He wants mean, athletic, strong guys on the offensive line. And pretty much every lineman he took fits that description. Other than Jatiri Carter, who's a little bit slow, and Doug Kramer, who's a little bit slow. Everyone else was big, mean, strong, and athletic. And that fits perfectly for the wide zone type of scheme that we're going to be running this offseason. I'm going to bring this up every 5 minutes because I'm obsessed with it. But our offensive linemen fit it perfectly. And whether that's Tevin Jenkins at right tackle, maybe Larry Boreham at guard, then you got Lucas Patrick at center, and then Braxton Jones at left tackle, Cody Whitehair at left guard. Maybe you play whatever you want to do. Like I said, there's possibilities, and then there's free agency, like Rishab said, where you could go out and maybe sign JC Treader, and then that kicks Patrick into guard. You get a guard that gets cut, and then you can pick him up. There's plenty of possibilities, and then with the rest of the cap space, there's the defensive line you can bulk up. You can look, maybe get another linebacker because we're running that 4-3. You need that strong side backer, and I don't think we have that guy on the roster right now, although I do like Jack Sanborn, which we can get into in a couple minutes. And you can get another receiver. I know Emmanuel Sanders is a guy that's kind of been floating around Bears Twitter recently for like, should Chicago go after him? Which I would be a fan of, But with the offensive line, there's a lot of possibilities for what they can still do before the season starts. I don't think all 5 of our starting linemen are on the roster currently.
The last thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good.
The last thing I wanted to add for the offensive line, I think not even just talking about the starting unit. I think one thing I really like that Poles did, which was involving drafting all of the offensive linemen possible, is we just have so much more depth. Not even just an offensive line. The entire roster has so much more depth than it did last year. Ryan Pace was like either did really good moves or really dumb moves, but we never had depth. So if there was an injury, we were basically screwed because the backup was like an undrafted player who has never played a snap in the league. What Poles did is I like that he got depth at every position. Like last year, we weren't talking at all about, who could start at this position, who could start at this position. It was basically like, you know who your starters are, your backups are the worst in the league, that's it. Like, we have some really good depth. I really like the depth on the offensive line. Braxton Jones, Doug Kramer, Zach Thomas, the other offensive lineman we drafted. He's like the only one who wasn't mentioned. Jatir Carter, Lucas Patrick. God forbid Sam Mustipher has to ever play a snap in the league again. He's at least on the roster at the moment. I think he could be a serviceable backup who just doesn't play. I'll accept that, but it's still depth, and it's better than we had him as a starter last year.
Yeah. Real quick, Olin, if you're watching this, Jarett does not speak for the rest of us. That's his opinion on Mustipher only. So if you're going after someone, go after him.
That's a little harsh, don't you think? Isn't that a little harsh for Mustipher?
I don't think he's good either.
Listen. He might come choke me out over this. I don't like Mustipher.
I don't either.
Not a fan. He is probably the weakest center I've ever seen. He gets pushed back every play.
Yeah.
I don't think he's like the worst offensive lineman in the league, but he was very painful to watch last season.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to die on the Sam Mustipher
lineman.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think he was close to the worst offensive lineman last year. If you look at a lot of his plays last year, and like you guys said, he was like one of the most unathletic, one of the slowest guys in the NFL. Like, I don't know if you guys look at RAS scores, like the relative athletic scores.
His
RAS score was like 0.5 or something. It ranked last among like 10,000 centers in the last 30 years.
Never mind.
He was starting for a long time for us somehow.
Yeah, this offseason I kind of discovered the RAS scores, and I've kind of fallen in love with them. I did not see Mustipher's, and I had no idea it was that low.
Go check it out. Just search Mustipher RAS on Twitter. You'll find it.
I saw it in passing once, and I about shit my pants. It is the most pathetic thing I have ever seen. And then I thought to myself, God damn, Olin's really choking people out over this, man. He's got a 0.5 RAS score, and he's assaulting coworkers. I got to stop taking shots at Olin. He's going to come to my house.
Hey, I was gonna say, do you think that's the craziest thing to happen in Bears Twitter? Like,
it's gotta be. It's gotta be.
It's gotta be, right?
I mean,
nothing even comes close. That was insane. One thing, or a couple things I want to ask. One thing I want to ask, and then one I kind of have a hot take. We'll see how you guys feel about it. First thing, didn't we sign a guy from the Colts that was slotted to be our right guard, but then he got a severe injury?
You're thinking of a guy from the Vikings, right? Isn't that where Dozier came from?
Yeah, Dakota Dozier was from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought he was slotted to be one of our starting guards, and then he got a severe injury. Is that right?
Yeah.
He was at OTAs our right guard. I think that would have ended at OTAs.
Yeah.
Like go to Vikings Twitter and hear them talk about Dakota Dozier at all. There's no way this man should start on
Dozier is their Mustipher. Put it that way.
Got it. Okay, I wasn't gonna judge.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
And then my second thing is that I've always actually thought, and I completely agree why people think that. Oh God, I'm blanking out his name. Jenkins was gonna be a guard because he has a lot of strength. He's got a lot of fluidity in that. I've always kind of saw him as a left tackle actually, and it's because of that athleticism. Even if he is undersized, if you notice around the league, that kind of idea of that edge defender being this big, strong guy has kind of like evaporated. It's been more about these like slimmer, really freakishly athletic guys that can quickly get around the bend or quickly have the hand fighting to be able to get inside. And I always thought that Tevin Jenkins really excelled at that. Just watching him when he was at college, is that he had really quick hand movement, and he was very he got very low, and then he was able to kind of shuffle along. I don't know like the football term for that, but he shuffled along really well as people try to get along the bench. I don't know what you feel about that. I always saw him more as a tackle and specifically a left tackle.
I mean, if you want to look at it from the perspective that edge rushers are kind of slimming down, like you said, and becoming these quick guys, I can see where you're coming from. Absolutely. And if they go that route and Jenkins can pan out as a left tackle, even better. Even better, because I think he's a franchise lineman regardless. I'm very high on Jenkins. And if that happens to be a franchise tackle where he can be that sort of, I don't want to say Trent Williams because he's a lot smarter, but that type of guy where he's, in the run game and stuff, he's going to roll out and pop somebody at the second level, which Jenkins is most certainly capable of, which is why I like him as a guard, then by all means, abso-fucking-lutely, that would be beautiful.
That's the dream.
Yeah, that would be the dream, but I don't know. We saw him a little bit at left tackle last year, and, maybe we can chalk that up to Nagy as well. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh on my judgment there, but I didn't love what I saw. So who knows? Maybe. I mean, you do make a very, very good point with the smaller, quicker edge rusher philosophy, so to speak. Anyone want to add on to that?
I mean, I will point out the whole slimmer offensive lineman thing. I feel like as of now, again, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I prefer that over the big bodies. I don't remember if it was Boreham or Jenkins, but I remember when there was a news thing that came out when they came into the league. They were told you need to put on weight, get big like an offensive lineman. So they put on all this weight going into last year. And then Poles comes in. He's like, no, you need to lose this weight,
Jenkins.
become athletic and faster. And he lost I want to say it was 20 pounds in the offseason, going into the offseason. Wow. Which the amount of speed you're going to get losing 20 pounds is going to be so valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he said he was out there doing Pilates and shit to drop weight, and he dropped 20 pounds, like you said. Tevin put in the work this offseason. I'm very, very excited to see what he's going to do.
Extremely. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, like you guys said, I think he might be more suited at guard in the NFL, at least, according to what we've seen right now. But in college, his tape at right tackle is phenomenal. It's one of the best tackles in college football. And obviously, that doesn't always translate to the NFL to the next level, but I think it all depends on where Ryan Poles sees him, and it also depends on who else we have on the offensive line. If we get anybody else to play the guard spot, maybe you put Tevin at right tackle, because there's probably not too many other tackles available on the market right now. So we'll have to see what other moves we make.
Yeah. If anyone watching out there, if you want a great just watch an offensive lineman blow people up, just absolutely demolish people, either watch Tevin Jenkins at Oklahoma State or watch Brett Coleman's video on Tevin Jenkins, because both of those are peak offensive line tape. It's so much fun to watch.
Probably the best offensive line highlight I've ever seen, besides that Quentin Nelson one from a couple years ago.
Quentin Nelson's a different animal. I love that dude.
The beast. He's got that dog in him.
He is the definition of having that dog in him.
Right.
Now,
with Quentin Nelson, I don't know if you guys when it comes to draft time, there's very few times where I'm super excited about an offensive lineman. And I'm I will do anything to have this offensive lineman on my team, because it's I hate to say it, it's not an exciting thing to draft, because you want to draft those receivers, those linebackers, those people that you get to see make plays all the time. But Quentin Nelson was probably the only offensive lineman where I was I don't care what it takes, trade up to number one, get this man. This guy is going to be elite.
Wow. Yeah. That was the Roquan draft, right?
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I'm not complaining. Roquan's been very good for us.
Just making an observation.
Yeah.
Fan.
Yeah, I've got a funny story about that, actually. So my freshman year of high school was that draft. And I had this math teacher who was the football coach. He was kind of a dick, so I'm not going to say his name, but if you went to school with me, you know who I'm talking about. And all of the football players are in that class with me, so we would talk about football a lot. And the day before the draft or the day of the draft, either or, we did a first-round mock draft. And when it came to Chicago, he let me pick, and I was like, okay, I want Quentin Nelson or I want Roquan Smith. And he laughed in my face and said, really? With Edmonds on the board?
Oh my God.
And I think I came out on top there. I'm just saying, I think I was in the right in that situation, but I literally laughed in my face and said, with Edmonds on the board? Yeah. And I was right.
Can I add to that real fast, just
Yeah,
because
go
it kind
for
of
it.
piggybacks off that? So, my first ever draft where I actually took NFL draft analysis really seriously was the 2017, 2018 draft. Which one was that? 2017, right?
2017 was Mitch. 2018 was Roquan.
2018. Okay, that's right. Yeah, how can I forget the Mitch thing? That was actually the first freelance journalism article I've ever wrote was about that draft, and I was a huge truther for Tremaine Edmonds. And then my friend, who was a huge Georgia fan, was like, "Are you out of your goddamn mind? Have you ever seen Roquan Smith tape?" And I was like, "Yeah, but this and this and that." But I wasn't a very good analyst at that time, and then sure enough, like I was like, "Oh my god, Roquan's gonna be a bust." And then here we are. I mean, he's not an all-pro because he got snubbed, but you know what I mean? Not a pro bowler.
Top 5 linebacker talent-wise.
Yeah, right, exactly. Oh, yeah, he's top 5 for sure, but yeah, I would definitely aim Edwards there.
Yeah. All right.
I can say something about Roquan that'll make all of you cringe really bad. I was in a debate with someone on Twitter. It was like a couple weeks ago, and he claimed that Roquan was not a top 3 or 5 linebacker because he wasn't in the Pro Bowl.
Oh my God, I am a firm anti-Pro Bowl narrative pusher. The Pro Bowl does not mean a damn thing in the year of our Lord 2022. It does not mean exactly.
Yeah.
Mitchell David Trubisky was a Pro Bowler. Need I say
more?
Mitch,
by the way. No hate to Mitch. I love Mitch.
Yeah, I love Mitch to death too.
Mitch was one of my favorite players, and him in the Pro Bowl just proves that it means nothing whatsoever.
Exactly.
Even in the Pro Bowl challenges, he was one of the quarterbacks, and it was I don't know what the challenge was called. I didn't really watch them, but I saw the highlight or whatever, where basically he had to throw a ball, lob it over a wall to a receiver, and it took him no joke 7 or 8 tries. He'd either overthrow the receiver or smack the wall.
Yeah,
it was awful.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah. Mitch just couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. That was his biggest issue. We were just ragging on Nagy for 20 minutes. Mitch was still a bad quarterback either way. I don't think any other coach was going to save him. But I think we've about wrapped up with offense. And before we move on to defense, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up my favorite player on the offense, not named Cole Kmet. Well, at least at my favorite position. Maybe I'm overselling him a little bit. And that's Kari Blasingame. Because I am a big fan of fullbacks. I'm absolutely obsessed with the position. And I think Kari Blasingame might sneakily have been one of our best signings of the offseason. Because I keep bringing up this wide zone Shanahan-esque, and I'm being dead serious here, this wide zone Shanahan-esque run scheme offense we're running needs a fullback desperately. And who better to play that than the guy who was blocking for Derrick Henry? That is huge for Chicago. So now we've got the guy who was blocking for Derrick Henry, blocking for David Montgomery, blocking for Khalil Herbert. He's also an athlete. I don't know if you guys remember the preseason last year when he absolutely torched our defense on a screenplay. And granted, it's the preseason, but the dude's athletic. He can catch a pass. So he's another guy that, if needed, can be a kind of safety blanket for Fields if you want to send Kmet downfield. I think he's going to be a lot bigger part of our offense than people are really giving him credit for, and I'm so excited for that to happen. I'm so excited for Kari to just absolutely take the city of Chicago by storm as the first fullback we've had since Michael Burton in 2018.
God,
yeah. I was about to ask. I don't even remember the last time we had a fullback. 'Cause I remember Burton, but I feel like we didn't use him whatsoever.
No, he was just there.
And I feel like our offense hasn't utilized a fullback in actually utilized a fullback in a long time, which I do like Blasingame. He's one of my he's my go-to Madden fullback just because that speed.
Right.
But I feel like I haven't seen a lot of his tape, so I don't know how he is as a blocker, but I do know out of the backfield he can be a solid weapon. Maybe not to the extent of a Kyle Juszczyk, probably the best fullback of all time, but I feel like he can at least be efficient and help the offense more than hurt it. So
yeah. I mean, he's like I said, he's blocked for Derrick Henry for almost every year of his career except for last year. He was hurt last year, so he wasn't blocking for Henry. But before that, we've Derrick Henry putting up insane stat lines, the guy blocking in front of him was Blasingame. Blasingame is a great lead blocker because of that speed. He's really good at hitting the edge and kind of, getting out there, being that lead blocker, throwing that first block at the second level. He can also block up the middle. You can run him up the middle. He's going to be a very versatile piece for our offense. And I feel like a lot of NFL teams are, wasting a missed opportunity by not utilizing guys like that more, because there's a lot of guys out there. And I could go on a whole 40-minute rant just about that, but I'm not going to do all that. I got my point across with Kari. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to that, or if we want to move on to the defense here, because we've been talking about the offense for, I think, an hour.
Can I add 2 points here?
Go for it. Go for it.
First of all, I cannot believe we're having a nuanced conversation about Kari Blasingame in late June for a guy. This goes into my second point, for a guy who's probably going to get cut after the first preseason.
Absolutely not.
You watch your mouth. The conversation.
You watch your mouth.
You're about to get dropped from the call.
Yeah, yeah. We will not tolerate fullback slander.
I know my guy Ryan Poles. He's probably going to tell Kari to gain 40 pounds and be a lineman.
We're gonna have Kari at guard this year. Yeah, that's the answer.
There we go. We found our guard problem. We're gonna put Kari at guard. Perfect. But no, I do vaguely remember that, and all I can say is he seems like a good fullback.
Yeah, I made a fullback list a couple months ago, and I put Kari as my 5th best fullback in football. Might be a little bit biased, but yeah, I've got it on TikTok. I'll have to send you the link after this. And like I said, might be a little bit biased, but he's definitely one of the better fullbacks in football for sure.
I feel like I can't name that many fullbacks. Probably know like 3 off the top of my head.
Is Vontae Leach still in the league?
I wish.
I feel like I know a respectable amount of fullbacks, but David made like it was a TikTok. I don't remember what he was talking. It was the all fullback team.
Yeah.
And he was like, it was doing like picking the teams, and he just knew the fullback off the top of his head. And like the Texans was Andy Janovich. I'm like, I thought he was on like the Browns or the Broncos or something.
I thought he was a kicker.
What?
Is that not the most kicker name you ever heard?
I mean, yeah, it sounds like a kicker. No, Andy Janovich was a good fullback back in the day. He signed with the Texans this offseason. He's still solid.
Keeping up with that fullback news, like I'm big into the NFL. I don't know all of the fullbacks.
So. Listen. Yeah, you're a fullback. I've been described as a fullback fiend. That's my official title that I was given by my TikTok comments. Yeah, you're a fullback fiend when you follow and have notifications on for an account called Fullback Watch. I get all the latest fullback news like immediately. I am a different breed of obsessed with fullbacks. So like I said, I'm very, very excited for Kari. But like I said, we spent like an hour on the offense. So we got to talk about the defense now, which is Chicago's bread and butter. And I would say the better unit of the two. I don't think that's a hot take or anything like that. I feel like the first place we should probably start is with the defensive line, because I think that's where I have most of my concerns with the defense. So when do you guys want to start out? Or I can start. Okay. My sorry. My biggest concern right now, like I said, is with the defensive line. If Robert Quinn gets traded, our edge rushers are scary. I like Travis Gibson. I think he's going to have a big year, double-digit sacks minimum. But then on the opposite side, you're looking at Sam Kamara. You're looking at Mario Edwards Jr., who admittedly is not terrible. You've got Al-Qadim Muhammad, and you've got Dominique Robinson, who I have high hopes for, but he's a very, very raw prospect. And if he's starting day one, I'm going to be terrified for us and his development, because, he's a converted receiver. He's only played the position for like a year or two. So he has a high ceiling, but he needs a lot of work. So if Robert Quinn does get traded, which I haven't really been keeping up with that. I know he was like sitting out of OTAs. I don't know if there's been any news since then with him, but I'm very concerned there. And then the interior of the defensive line as well. I like Justin Jones, but he's not like the guy that you want as your number one interior defensive lineman. I think he's solid. He can make some splash plays, but you need somebody more consistent alongside him. And who do we got down there? We've got Tonga, we've got Laquel London, we've got Angelo Blackson. We've got a guy that I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, Alafohai, I believe is how you say that. And then Mike Pennell and Micah Du Treadway. Like our defensive line is rough right now.
The bag is definitely being reached in really deep here, and I just like I said when Ryan Poles was bringing those offensive linemen, the other position I meant was the defensive line, and I just think that it's taken a huge blow. I don't think you need to be a super serious Bears fans to know that. Lost Eddie Goldman, lost Akeem Hicks, tragically lost Khalil Mack. Even though I do understand why that had to happen, so I think we kind of have to accept that position group is going to be similar in quality to the offensive line counterpart they have. Though I actually have a little bit more optimism for that defensive line group because we have a lot of guys like there. And I love that Travis Gibson truther stuff, right? By the way, that was awesome. And we have a lot of guys just like that who could perform. I'm a big fan of Kairos Tonga. I think he showed a lot of potential in the limited time he did play. They started giving him more reps as the season went on. I'm also really like Mario Edwards as well. I feel like he did flash after I think he got suspended at the beginning of the year, right? And I think he has a lot of those all-around solid qualities, and that's why. And then we also brought in those off-season transactions to kind of help with that end part. So I think it's gonna be okay. I think we gotta hope Robert Quinn stays here. I'm gonna go under the assumption he will, because I'm just like you, David. I didn't really look into that. I just thought it was too negative. It's not something I want to kind of look at right now. So hopefully Robert Quinn stays. He plays at a similar level. Travis Gibson kind of gives that same effort and improves how he did on last year. And then hopefully those interior guys, Landell Collin and Kairos Tonga, be able to get enough push. But very similar in quality to that offensive line counterpart.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah, I feel like no, you go first. Sorry.
Okay. I was gonna say that Eberflus, right? Like if you look at his talent with the Colts, back in 2018, even like last year, like he's never really had star, defensive lineman, right? But still, year after year, he pretty much always has a top 10 defense. Last year, he got, I think it was like 7 sacks out of Al-Quadin Muhammad, who's coming back with him to Chicago. So I think obviously we don't have a ton of talent on paper. If you look at the Bears defensive line right now, I'm not sure most casual NFL fans could even name half of them, but there is some proven concepts that Eberflus has, proven coaching that he's done, that he's been able to get the most out of all the defensive linemen that he does have. So I'm not as worried about the defensive line as I am about the offensive line, because I feel like, with the rotation that we have with Travis Gibson, I'm super high on Travis Gibson, just like you guys. Like there is still a chance we could be maybe like an average unit, not like a superstar unit, not like a great unit, but hopefully with proper coaching, with good scheming, we should be putting these guys into positions to make plays.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of nailed that with the whole Eberflus thing. He's if there's there's been reports ever since we got him, or like screenshots of like the players on his team, where they were drafted or how much they were signed for, and there's not really many big names. DeForest Buckner, who I think is maybe the most underrated defensive lineman in football, is the big name there. But, like when you think of their team, Darius Leonard is a name, but he was a 3rd-round pick, I believe.
2nd round,
and
I
I'm
believe.
not going to bank on this, that because Eberflus is here, all of our role players are going to become elite players. But I do think it'll help a lot. Last year, our defensive coordinator, whose name is escaping me, and I can't think of it at the moment.
Sean Desai.
Sean Desai, I cannot believe I forgot that. But I liked him as a defensive coordinator, but I do think he was very new to it, as it was his first time being a defensive coordinator. And I think Eberflus, even though he's not calling the plays, but just him working with the defense will help out tremendously. With our defensive line, separating the edge from the interior, I'm not worried about the edge very much. I am under the assumption Robert Quinn is going to stay here until he gets traded, because there's been rumors like all last year too that he was going to get traded, and then going into this offseason, it's yet to happen. I'm not expecting it to happen. So I really like Robert Quinn. I do think he's not going to get 18, 19 sacks this year. It'll probably take a step back, because that is some elite play that he is getting up there in age. It's going to go back a little bit. I like Travis Gibson. We've all said this. I think if you're a Bears fan, you like Travis Gibson. That's there's no way around it. He's one of our potential studs in the making. Dominique Robinson, like you said, very raw prospect. I think in a couple of years he can be a very solid edge rusher, but for now, like you said, horrifying if he starts right away. But the interior is where I'm worried, because I feel like we don't really have a true good interior defensive lineman. I think they're all 2nd, 3rd options, rotational players. Justin Jones is our number 1. I know he had some solid games last year for the Chargers, but there's not really any solid people that I would completely trust. I like Khyiris Tonga a lot. I'm a big Khyiris Tonga lover. I loved him when we drafted him. He's like just so strong. He will push back anybody. He makes the other center on the opposing teams look like Sam Mustipher. But my only concern with him is I feel like he's a true nose tackle, which we don't really have with our defense anymore. We do more of like a 3 technique, and I don't know if he's going to fit into that well. Hopefully, Eberflus figures it out and it works out, because I would love for him to stay on the team. But my biggest worry is him even like fitting on the team whatsoever.
Yeah, Eberflus seems like the type of guy that is just going to use talent. He'll make it fit. So I'm personally not too worried about that. He's a very, very smart defensive mind. So if Tonga is I'm a big fan of Tonga too. I know I kind of brushed him off earlier, but I do like Tonga. And if he is really a talented football player and Eberflus is a fan, he'll find a way to make him work. He'll find a way to get him involved. Even if he's just going to go 3 down linemen at times, switch that up a little bit, play him that way. Or maybe he can develop him into a 3 technique. Because I think coming out, where was it? BYU, I believe. He was a very raw prospect, but like you said, he was incredibly strong. He is going to bull rush defensive or offensive linemen like very few people can, just based off pure strength. But my one concern, or not my one concern, kind of piggybacking off of talking about Eberflus being great and always finding ways to scheme guys and make them look better, I think Jarett pointed out perfectly that he had DeForest Buckner there. So even though a good bit of it was schematics, like at the end of the day, if you have DeForest Buckner on your defensive line, everyone else is going to play marginally better because of all of the attention he draws. And other than Quinn, who, we don't know if he's even going to play week 1 or if he's going to play at all or if he'll get traded midseason, whatever, we don't necessarily have a guy like that. So everyone's going to be getting like equal attention. And in that scenario, it's a little bit different and a little bit harder to hide your weaknesses, so to speak, unless Travis Gibson completely blows up, which is possible. Not to brag or anything, but I called the Travis Gibson breakout in the preseason last year. After like the 3rd week, I made a TikTok and I was like, this guy's going to be him. And he came in for Mac, mid-season, week 8, whatever, had like 7 sacks, looked really, really good. So maybe I'm underestimating Eberflus as a coach, a little bit, but not having a guy like Buckner is definitely going to hold him back in that regard. So I don't know. Hopefully he can just pull all the tricks out of his bag and really pull something off that give us even like a middle of the pack unit. I would be fine with.
I would say that's probably the ceiling. It's probably more a middle of the pack kind of defensive line, or at least a pass rushing group. Because we also have, we didn't even mention, and we got like people like Charles Snowden. I know we just signed Nicholas Morrow in the offseason. Not as much a pass rusher, but another guy that you'll probably have to incorporate some exotic blitzes to kind of get that pressure. And I just kind of, I don't know how conservative of a defensive play caller Eberflus is, or if he'll have a say in that. But I do think that's going to be the only way to ever get consistent pressure, even just pushing the pocket or just pushing running lanes. It's because like Khyiris Tonga, strong guy but undersized. Robert Quinn, not like a full bull rush kind of guy, more finesse. And then Travis Gibson's a pretty good all around, but he, like you said, he's not that guy though. Right now, I would love for him to, but he's not at this point right now. So I think this is where Eberflus is going to have to find a lot of creativity and do a little bit more with less in comparison with the rest of the defensive groups, because I think the other defensive groups are in a little bit better shape. I would probably say the defensive line is going to be our big problem. Yeah. But I have faith in the same way to how I have faith in polls. I have faith that Eberflus will kind of find a way to generate that pressure when it's needed.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think another thing too, I completely glanced over it myself, so I'm not knocking you guys for not bringing it up, but having a good secondary can really help a pass rush, because if nothing's open, obviously it's going to give you more time to get to the quarterback. And I have very high hopes for our secondary this year. Jaylen Johnson, I think, is like a top 15 corner right now, can potentially jump himself up into that top 10 conversation. Jaquan Brisker was one of my top safeties in the draft. Absolutely love him. Kylo Gordon, I wasn't quite as high on at the time, but upon going back and looking at him again, I'm like, okay, I see the vision. I love him as well. So, and then Eddie Jackson, which I don't know how you guys feel about him. I'm personally not a huge fan, but the secondary, I think, is, and then Tavon Young as well, who, when healthy, is one of the better nickel corners in football. Almost completely forgot about him. And Thomas Graham's there, who looked solid last year when he actually got PT. So our secondary might have to pick up a lot of the slack with our linebackers, obviously, which I'm less worried about. But our secondary, if they have to pick up that slack and they can help out the defensive line, that's something that could also bail them out. That, like I said, I didn't even think about initially.
Yeah, I love our secondary. It's probably like my favorite part of our team. Other than Justin Fields, I think regardless, Justin Fields is going to be fun to watch this year. But our secondary, I feel like, is more on the underrated side. I feel like a lot of it has to do with Eddie Jackson finally gets into form after, like 3 years. I was on the Eddie Jackson train for a very long time. Like, he had that first year that was insane. And then the second year, they kind of moved him over to like a strong safety role. And he took a step back and like, oh, it's because he switched his position. He'll be fine. Then the next year, he goes back to free safety. Still doesn't really do anything. And I'm like, okay, he's just getting adapted to the new defense. And then another year, he does nothing. And then now there's going into this year. I don't want to like just keep dragging on my support for him, but I do have high hopes for Eddie Jackson this year. I'm not saying he's going to be the best safety in football or anything, but I think that he will bounce back at least a little bit and be an exciting player to watch again, get a few turnovers. Honestly, with Eberflus in general, I feel like our defense is going to, like his way of doing things, we're going to get a lot more turnovers as well. And if Eddie Jackson gets turnovers, a lot of people are going to forget about the tackling issues to begin with. But Brisker was one of my favorite players in the draft. We haven't had a first-round pick in forever. We never get first-round picks. So I always kind of go through like the second, third round, and I'm like, okay, these are my favorite players. Brisker, I'm a huge fan of. I think that he might be the second best like rookie safety in the league behind Kyle Hamilton, who I'm a huge fan of. And then Kylo Gordon, I don't know a whole lot about. Watching his tape after we drafted him, so I know there's some bias in there because I can't really avoid that. I like him, but I feel like his play style fits really well with Jaylen Johnson. And Jaylen Johnson, I know there's a lot of people, Bears fans, like hypothetically overvalue him. I see some people saying he's towards the top 10 range. Then there's other people who are like Jaylen Johnson is like around the 25 range. I think he's kind of smack dab in the middle of that, like the 15 to 20 is where I would put him for now. I think with a better defensive scheme, he will jump up there a little bit. But I think our slot is a huge thing because last year, we had Duke Shelley or Kendall Vildor. I did not like either of them playing. Like they were getting burnt every single play. And I'm happy with whoever we start at the slot. Tavon Young, like you pointed out, was one of the best slots, if not like the best slot in football when he was healthy. He had a big contract with the Ravens for that reason. He was a solid player. Injuries derailed his career. I expect him to start, but even if he doesn't, or if he gets hurt because of the injury problems, Thomas Graham, I liked him when we drafted him last year. I thought it was very strange that he didn't even like make the active roster till it was like week 14 or 15 or something like that. I feel like, and including how well he played when he did make the active roster, I don't want to keep hating on Nagy, but as a talent evaluator, as a head coach, I don't see how someone you don't even have on your roster comes in for injuries and plays better than like any other corner except for Jaylen Johnson for the rest of the year. Like it makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like you guys said, I think the big question mark is Eddie Jackson in the secondary because we have a lot of guys with potential. We have Kylo Gordon, highest second-round pick. We have Jaquan Brisker, highest second-round pick, who a lot of people viewed as like one of the top 2 safeties in this year's draft. We have Jaylen Johnson, who even if he's not like a top 10 corner, he's still super young. He's still only like 23 years old. He's gotten respect from Devontae Adams, from Cooper Kupp, from some of the best receivers in the game, so he's still ascending. I think hopefully by this season, like if he has a breakout season, for example, if he's like top 10 by the end of this season, that would be a really good thing for the Bears secondary and also going forward as well. But Eddie Jackson, like if he gets back to his, I don't know if 2018 level is possible again because that was one of the best seasons in like the history for like any safety. So I don't know if that's gonna happen ever again. But even if he gets back to like 2019 level where he was still, I think a lot of Bears fans would say above average as a safety, that'll provide the Bears with a solid back end to their secondary. And, you said, if you have a good secondary, it's going to make it easier for the pass rush to get home. So hopefully Eddie Jackson gets back to that level. I think playing next to a solid, strong safety in Jaquan Brisker, who can play in the box, that can hit pretty well, that can handle, a lot of the tackling responsibilities, that should free up Eddie Jackson to play that true, deep middle role. But Then again, last couple of years he has sort of played that role, but still not made as many plays as usual. So we'll see what happens. I think it's a make or break year for Eddie Jackson also, because we can get rid of him at like a decent, it's not going to be too much dead cap if we get rid of him after this year. So it's pretty much like a make or break season for Eddie Jackson. And hopefully he shows up, because I was a big fan of him like you guys, in 2018, 2019.
Yeah, definitely. And I think maybe I'm a little bit more pessimistic on Eddie Jackson. I just thought that last year was going to be that year for an opportunistic new defensive coordinator and Sean Desai. I thought we were going to be very aggressive. We were going to be attacking the ball. And some portions of our team did do that. Jaylen Johnson was active, even though he only got one interception, and Roquan Smith is amazing, of course. Though I think, in my opinion, that the back four, our corners and safeties, will play well despite Eddie Jackson. I think Eddie Jackson will be the weakest part of this defense, because I just don't think that opportunistic mindset and that same flash of special ability is there anymore. I haven't seen too many examples of that. And to what Rishab was just saying, he has been playing that free safety role, and then we had a good, strong safety in Tayshaun Gibson last year. And Tayshaun Gibson, while it was kind of a more like fluid kind of thing. It wasn't like Tayshaun's strong safety and Eddie's free safety. They kind of switched depending on whatever the formation was. But Tayshaun played immensely more well than Eddie Jackson did. So that was kind of the last excuse for me. I was like, okay, fine. Eddie's going to be coming into his role again. He's going to be part of an opportunistic defense. It was the pupil of Vic Fangio, right? That's what everyone said about Sean Desai. And he still didn't get there. And his performance only got worse as the season went on. Just missed tackles, bad angles, not reading plays correctly. So, and to kind of get off this pessimistic point, I think the rest of the defense will play well in spite of him, though I will say if Eddie Jackson does reach any sort of that potential that he once showed, I think this back four could be a top 10 defensive unit. But that is the make or break for him. And now when it comes to everyone else, Jaylen Johnson, I think he's going to be incredible. I still think that he needs to be able to attack the ball in a manner where he has more opportunity for interceptions, because I specifically remember a couple where he dropped them just because Aaron Rodgers one off the top of my head went right through his hands, but I just think that that's not going to tell the whole story. I mean, he's a fantastic defender, and I hate when people say that, oh, Davante Adams, he burned him in that one game, but it was really only that slant and a couple other plays that he really got burnt on. But otherwise, I was extremely impressed with my performance with Jaylen Johnson against Davante Adams. So I'm not too worried about him. I think he's going to finally ascend into that top 10 status, because I agree with both you guys that I think he's kind of in that 15 to 10. I wouldn't say 15 to 20 like Jarett did. I would probably say that 15 to 10 range. And then going over to Kylo Gordon, I agree. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head. Maybe you guys can tell me. I can't remember who his counterpart on Washington was.
McDuffie.
That's the guy I was rooting for. Who was
Trent McDuffie.
McDuffie, that's who I was going for, because I did watch both of their tapes, and Kylo Gordon was more of this kind of conservative, very smart, reading the play, really good tackler, actually. I was very surprised. He's actually a very willing tackler. But McDuffie was this very opportunistic, attacking the ball, incredible instincts. But, I mean, it's okay. He went and it's done. But I'm very happy with Kylo Gordon, because just like Jarett said, he plays really well off of Jaylen Johnson, where I think Jaylen Johnson is going to be more of that attack and have incredible instincts to be able to read where a play is going, where ball placement is going to be. Kylo Gordon is going to be that really sure, Kyle Fuller-esque conservative tackler kind of guy, very smart, and I think that's a great compliment. And then, of course, Jaquan Brisker. I mean, everyone was so excited when we got him. Very strong hitter. We're going to kind of have that same trend of quality players at the strong safety position now after Adrian Amos, who's one of my favorite Bears ever. I'm so sad he went to the Packers. And then Tayshaun Gibson and now Jaquan Brisker. So I think this unit has a ton of potential. Oh, and don't let me forget Thomas Graham and Tavon. I think Thomas Graham actually will win that starting position. I think he showed a lot of flashes, and I think he's only going to feed off that and become more consistent. And I was even impressed with him in the preseason, too. I remember he made a couple really great plays against that Bills squad, ironically enough, even though we were getting destroyed in that game. I remember there were a few corners that made a couple great plays there, and Thomas Graham was one of them. So back to my point, overall, I think that back four has a ton of potential to be a great squad. I think Eddie Jackson is weighing them down, and I hate to say that because actually he's my little brother's favorite player. It's going to break his heart when he sucks again, but unfortunately I think that's where it's going to end up, even though I am rooting for him.
Yeah, I think, and this is kind of rich from a fan perspective, considering we're talking about professional athletes here. But I think the big thing with Eddie Jackson is effort. I don't see a lot of effort coming from him, especially when it comes to tackling. And I understand he's a free safety, and that's not necessarily his primary role. That's not necessarily his primary job. But you're a goddamn defensive football player. You need to be able to bring somebody down if you need to. That's part of your job, no matter what position you're playing. Kind of like you said with Kylo Gordon. He's a corner. He can tackle people. What the hell's Eddie's excuse? There is no reason why. And this isn't like a new thing. It's not like this started after 2018. If you go back, this was a thing back in 2018. There were a lot of times where Eddie Jackson was just kind of flailing around out there, but nobody paid attention because he was making these big splash interceptions, because he was able to kind of run all over the field and make all these crazy reads, which he does have good instincts. I'll give him that. In terms of being a ball hawk, he's fantastic. But if you can't tackle, that's a big issue. And, maybe it'll be a little bit different this year because I think Jaquan Brisker, at least potential-wise, is the best safety we've had since Amos. And I think, honestly, could have a higher ceiling than Amos. So maybe the two of them paired together will kind of allow Eddie to take a step back and really survey the field and do that thing he was doing back then. But I'm really concerned about his effort. And thankfully, Matt Eberflus is like the number one effort defensive coordinator in football, other than like Bill Belichick. He's got the hits principle, what is it? It's something intensity, turnovers, and scoring.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
Something
either
like
way, intensity is part of it. And Eddie Jackson is not an intense football player. And I would argue over the past couple years since Fangio left, the entire defense has lacked intensity. Everybody from Khalil Mack to Akeem Hicks at times, the only guys I can genuinely think of that I wouldn't put in that category are Roquan, Robert Quinn, and Jaylen Johnson. Outside of them, there were guys taking breaks constantly, just trotting themselves off the field, and some of that was injury because they were on the field all the time, or just giving up on plays. There was a lot of that, and we're not going to see any of that under Eberflus. And if we do, that guy's going to be off the field the next week. We already saw that in the OTAs where Jaylen skipped the voluntary and started out with the second unit, and a lot of people didn't like that. I love that. That's setting a damn example because this team needs discipline. It was a very undisciplined defense, and Eberflus is the exact opposite of that. He's going to make sure they're doing their thing. And maybe that'll be enough to light a fire under Eddie's ass where he's like, okay, I need to tackle people. I need to make an effort. Because it's not even bad angles. It's just a complete lack of effort on tackles. And, maybe some of that's heart, and you can't really teach heart. I don't know. And part of it might even be him being scared of getting injured again. He was the one that tore his ACL in 2018, the last week of the season, right? Was it him or Amos? Because somebody missed the playoff game, and that was like a huge deal. Yeah.
I don't think it was like a torn thing. I think it was like it was like a minor injury where he could have played in that playoff game, but then didn't because he wanted to wait for the next week. We didn't get a next week.
That makes me hate the guy even more. That makes me hate Eddie Jackson even more because he would have played.
I don't think it was his call though. Like I think they kept him out.
I mean, yeah.
At least according to what I read.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I will say I don't think the defense was the reason we lost that game. I think the reason was we scored 14 points or something. Like Mitch didn't even have a bad game in that game, but we put up 14 points because
that's what I was going to say. Am I the only person that remembers Mitch actually having a decent game?
Yeah, he played well. He played well. That throw to Robinson was nice.
Playoff Mitch is underrated. Okay, the Saints game, we would have took a lead at the beginning if Javon Wims had hands.
Oh God, don't even get me started on Javon Wims, dog. Don't even get me started on him.
Maybe Mitch Trubisky just needs to be Nick Foles for somebody. Maybe that's his career path. Don't play during the regular season. Get to the postseason, plug him in, and let him work magic. Maybe that's Mitch's way to go Super Bowl.
Carson, we need you.
Mitch is going to go to Washington. That's what's going to happen. Mid-season, he gets traded to Washington. They're going to make a push for the playoffs, and he's going to take him to the Super Bowl. That's
Can I add one thing to the
go for it?
Is that I also don't want to discount the fact that we re-signed DeAndre Houston Carson.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you look at any of my tweets from last year and the year before, that 2020 season as well, is like every time he was on the field, I swear to God, he did something that was extremely productive for the team. It was a batted ball. It was an interception. It was a tackle that saved the first down. That guy, not opportunistic in the way where he's making turnovers, but he's always in the right place at the right time. So, and I would hate that if it came to this. This would be the bleakest of scenarios. But if Eddie is really regressed that far, that could be the guy that replaces Eddie. And I hope to God that does not happen. But I just don't think that Eberflus is going to put up with that same amount of effort, like David was saying, that pisses us off. I don't think he's going to put up with that. And I think just like he made an example of Jaylen Johnson, I think he absolutely can make an example of Eddie Jackson if by midseason he's not performing in terms of statistics. I don't think that's everything, but if on the field he's not showing that effort, I think that DeAndre Houston-Carson can absolutely come in for him.
Yeah, if Eddie's loafing around out there, Eberflus is not going to put up with it. And honestly, DeAndre Houston-Carson, him playing that safety role, I wouldn't hate. Like, kind of like you said, him checking in and doing the most. He's like the sixth man of the year for our secondary. I love him. He's great.
Lou Williams of the NFL.
Yeah. He's the Lou Williams of the NFL.
He is so underrated. Mm-hmm. Like he's won us games coming from like a backup safety role, which is insane to me. Because I know it wasn't last season, the season before. He got the on the fourth down against the Buccaneers. He batted down the ball, I think, to beat the Buccaneers. And then the week after, or was the week before, we played Carolina and he got the game-winning interception.
I remember that.
DHC is insane. Wow. Like if I had like the money to buy jerseys I wanted, I would have a DHC, best special teamer in the NFL jersey. I'm a big fan of his, even though he doesn't get credit, and he probably never will.
Yeah. And another guy in our secondary that I can't believe none of us have brought up is Dane Crookshank, who was like he's a big deal signing. They call him in Tennessee like the tight end eraser or something to that effect, because he's so good in coverage against tight ends. So I think we're going to see a good bit of him on the field. I just realized we brought over two guys that I'm very excited to watch, both from Tennessee, him and Blassingame. I'm very excited to see what type of role Eberflus is going to have for Crookshank and how much, kind of PT he's getting. Because maybe if Eddie isn't performing, maybe Crookshank's the one that hits the field. Maybe he's the one that's getting a lot more reps. And, that's another position, the secondary. We have a lot of depth that I'm very, very happy with.
And to add to that, David, isn't it also Velus Jones Jr.? Is he also from Tennessee?
Yeah, he went to Tennessee. You're right.
Yeah.
He didn't play for the Titans, but yeah, he went to Tennessee University. You're right.
Oh, forgive me. I thought you meant that he was from the Volunteers.
Well, no, I just meant they both played for the Titans, but it's the same state, same thing.
Darrington Evans played for the Titans last year,
You're
too.
Right. You're right. I forgot about Evans, too. Hell yeah. Shout out to the state of Tennessee. Giving us
all. We could have got A.J. Brown out of that.
Oh, my God. If we had A.J. Brown, it'd be over.
That'd be insane.
It'd be over. God.
If we had A.J. Brown, national media would predict us to win 6 games.
True.
And Dan Orlovsky's wide receiver 3 comment would be getting a lot more praise. Right. That still might be the dumbest take I've seen all offseason. Even if you don't think Mooney's a great wide receiver 1, he's certainly a wide receiver 2 on most teams and would be an elite one at that. And at the bare minimum, he would make a great wide receiver 3. If you think he's below that, you simply don't know ball, which it's Dan Orlovsky, the man who ran out of the back of the end zone. I'm not too surprised if we're being honest. But,
yeah, right. And he also had that take, too, that like Justin Fields wasn't tough. Like he was like a quitter.
Yeah,
like, did you not see the guy get his ribs broken on national television?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you talking about?
I feel like Justin Fields, like one of the number one talking points of like why people like him is his toughness.
Yeah.
Like, he has insane toughness.
Dude got rocked a couple times last year and just popped right back up. Against the Steelers, Minka got him. Against the Vikings, I think it was Eric Kendricks got him. Dude takes hits.
Game?
Yeah, against the Bills, which, I mean, he didn't pop right back up from that one, but understandably so. Like, that hit was a lot worse.
He was alive, though.
Yeah, he got up. He was still breathing.
He got up. Right.
But last position group we got to talk about here on defense is the linebackers. I saved this for last because obviously the best player in Chicago, and I would say the best player in Chicago since 2019, Roquan Smith, is, like, I don't know if that's a hot take. I think Khalil Mack kind of took a step back his last 2 or 3 years in Chicago, and some of that was due to injury. I'll give him his credit for that. But, like, Roquan Smith has been that dude. And him playing with Matt Eberflus in a system like he's going to play that Darius Leonard role. We saw Eberflus develop Leonard into probably the best linebacker in football other than Fred Warner, in my opinion. I think Roquan Smith has more talent than Leonard. I think he has a higher ceiling than Leonard. So, I mean, assuming he plays, because we still don't quite know what's going on with the whole off the field stuff. I don't know if you guys want to bring that up, but he's got the talent. He's got more talent. I think he's got a higher upside than Leonard. And I think legitimately under Eberflus, he could be like the consensus number 1 linebacker here in a couple years. if it even takes that long.
For a little bit of a hot take, where I kind of got flamed on Twitter for saying this on a Bears page, with Roquan, I think they misunderstood. I said Roquan, with like the physical ability he has, he could potentially be the greatest linebacker in Bears history. You could call me dumb for that. I don't care. That's what I believe. I think physically Roquan Smith is insane, off the charts with his speed. He's also super smart, which I think is an underrated quality of his. I think that he could potentially be the best, and I got flamed so hard. People were like, we have Dick Butkus, Brian Urlacher, Mike Singletary.
Listen,
that's the dumbest take I've ever heard. But I think Roquan is, potentially, like I said, the best line could be the best linebacker in our history if he continues down this path, because he's been insane. I know he doesn't have the All Pros, even though I think All Pros don't matter.
He doesn't
have the Pro Bowlers. Pro Bowls definitely don't matter. I think if you look at the film, and even I'm not a big stats guy going off stats only, but if you look at the stats and you look at the film, Roquan is an insane linebacker. For our linebacker group this year, outside of him is where I have big question marks as well. I don't hate Nicholas Morrow.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton about him. He missed all of last year, but he could be a serviceable player. Now, the other linebacker spot is where I have no idea who's even going to start there. I think it's Matthew Adams
at the moment,
who actually just got arrested. So I don't think he'll get in big trouble for that. But
Dang.
He got arrested?
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter.
It was I actually worked for the news. So
I did see that. I did see that. Yeah, it was a gun charge.
What was it? Like a misdemeanor with a gun? And
okay.
I guess the lines didn't realize.
Okay.
Something like that.
He had a license for it, but just not in the state of Illinois, because Illinois has different gun laws and whatnot.
Right. So it's like
so
Pringle.
I don't think anything will happen of it.
It's like Pringle, where it was a goofy misdemeanor that it's illegal, but it's not detrimental to his career. Okay. He's not a piece of shit. He's just a little forgetful.
Right.
I can accept that. I can take that. Okay.
I think Matthew Adams would be a solid special teamer. I would not prefer having him come in as our starting linebacker at any point, but
yeah, I'm a big fan of Jack Sanborn out of Wisconsin. He was a guy I did my Bears mock draft a couple months ago, right before the draft. And I got a lot of heat for it because I actually went defense heavily, and everyone was like, that's so unrealistic. The Bears would never do that. And then what did we do? We drafted 2 defensive backs in the first round or in the second round. But regardless, I had Sanborn as our 4th or 5th round pick. And I think, he was playing alongside Leo Chenal at Wisconsin, and they were sort of in that Batman and Robin linebacker duo. I thought Sanborn he's an extremely physical guy. He's a hard hitter. He's smart. He's not very fast, and he's not the best in coverage, but he's going to be a strong side backer. And you don't need that guy to necessarily be as great in coverage. In coverage, a lot of that's just knowing what's going on. And Eberflus, as we've said, great teacher, super smart defensive coordinator. He can teach him. He's got all the physical attributes you want in a hard-hitting, run-stuffing outside linebacker. So I don't know if he'll be the starter week 1. I doubt he is, but I hope the Bears keep him around, and I hope Eberflus puts the effort forth to really develop him, because I think he can be a stud. I think he can be a legitimate chess piece on this defense. And then with Morrow, he's just one of those really athletic, flexible guys, which is good for, whether he's going to be the middle linebacker, the weak side linebacker, we really don't know, because Roquan was playing weak side at Georgia, and he really fits that role well. And I think that's where Darius Leonard plays for the Colts, if I'm not mistaken. So either way, him and Roquan, I think, are a great athletic duo. And if Sanborn can really come into his own, I think you've got a solid linebacker core. But with Matthew Adams, he's coming over from the Colts, I believe. So at the very least,
he is, yeah.
At the very least, Eberflus is familiar with him, and that can pay dividends to a certain extent.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Eberflus, he has said this in interviews, he's not afraid to play young players, which, again, we've hated on Nagy for about an hour and a half of this, but Nagy, he did not play young players at all. So there was never this young guy, he hasn't been in the league, so we don't really know what he has to offer. But with Eberflus, he's not afraid to do it. So I could very much see them playing Sanborn. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Again, Matthew Adams, I think, is a great special teamers and nothing more. So I would probably prefer the unproven talent.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing a gun guy. I'm not trying to advocate against it or anything, but I don't know if they view Sanborn as NFL ready. I don't know how raw they look at him, because he's definitely a more raw prospect. Like I said, I thought he was like a 4th, 5th round talent. But I don't know, if they start him week 1 and he balls out, hell yes, I would love that. I would love to be right about Sanborn. That would be fantastic. Give me 2 off seasons in a row where I'm right about an outside linebacker being good. That'd be great.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I won't pretend like I'm super knowledgeable on what's going on at linebacker right now. We can do the victory laps by Roquan, and I honestly think he can fill a lot of those holes that we might be missing at the like the Sam and the Will and things like that. But one thing that I was thinking too is that like why can't like Travis Gibson and them kind of come off the line of scrimmage and play those roles as well? If I don't know if I'm not recalling this, but if I remember right, Travis Gibson is a pretty well all around player, not Leonard Floyd level, but like he kind of had that speed, he has the strength, and I think he has the lateral quickness too. So my thought was that we kind of have some like a little bit of unknowns at those other positions around Roquan. So my thought was like, what about like Jeremiah Tachu, and what about Travis Gibson coming off the line of scrimmage to kind of play those roles, kind of like a hybrid between them.
Is Atachu still on the roster? I thought we cut him. Yeah. I could be wrong. Okay.
I don't want to burst your bubble. We did cut him.
Oh, okay. I was right. Okay, good.
Oh, my research was wrong. I literally looked into it. I thought Atachu was still on the team. Okay. Yeah. Ignore me. I was looking at roster.
You're on the right track, though.
It was insanely weird.
Yeah, you're on the right track, but I would argue Charles Snowden would fit that better. I think Charles Snowden would be a lot better. Yeah, because Charles Snowden, coming out of Virginia, I believe, he was touted as like a run-stopping edge rusher. That was his big thing, because, for lack of better words, he was like Leonard Floyd. That was kind of his comp coming out, was Leonard Floyd, and the fact that he went undrafted was insane to a lot of people, including myself. So if they want to work him as the strong side linebacker, like personally, I know when I'm going to get geeky for a minute, but like when I'm playing Madden franchise, I've put Snowden as an outside linebacker in a 4-3 before, and it's worked. And again, that's a video game, but like he's that type of player to where, again, he's not super fast, but he's strong, he's smart, he's good against the run. Maybe that's another possibility as well. So not quite a Tauchu, but Snowden, I think, is a better ball player anyways.
I think Snowden's a very underrated player on the defense. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he'll get a ton of playing time because I don't know how pro-ready he is, but I think he can be an underrated little like rotational lineman.
Mm-hmm.
Snowden flashed a lot in the preseason too, like what David was saying when he predicted Travis Gibson would be kind of a big name. I noticed that Charles Snowden also had a lot of those situations too. Mm-hmm. He just kind of like an overall kind of like freakish athlete, and that was going to be my other guy if I didn't stupidly say Atacho, was like that would be the guy that would kind of is raw. So Eberflus can kind of mold him into that kind of off-ball kind of linebacker, and then when I was saying before about bringing those exotic blitzes, that can be the guy you bring in because of his strength. Yeah. I kind of think that, we'll fill the gaps, of course. We'll put in, Morrow. We'll put in, I can't even remember the guy's name because David knows about that linebacker he was talking about.
Sanborn.
That just got drafted. Yes, and we could definitely fill those in. And then, like you said, he's probably raw. So I was thinking that maybe we can bring on in some of those younger talent guys that did flash already. And then hopefully in the preseason, they'll get those reps. And then we can kind of have guys like him and Charles Snowden kind of fill those roles around Roquan.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. I mean, Eberflus is a very intelligent defensive mind and very crafty, so I would not doubt that for a minute, that's at least running through his mind at the very moment. I'm sure that's something that he's at least thought of, weighed the pros and cons of and whatnot, and I'm sure it's something he'll experiment with a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like David said, like we're going to play young guys probably during this preseason, during the regular season too, so I could easily see Jack Sanborn like starting week 1 if we have to, right? Because who else do we have out there? And it's not like strong side backer is like a huge need either case. Like you play nickel a lot nowadays in the NFL, so you're not gonna have 3 linebackers on the field like every single snap, obviously. But like you guys have said, Roquan, definite superstar. I'm not worried about that at all. Nicholas Murrow, very athletic, has upside. We'll see what happens with him this season. Like I saw Raiders fans, especially on Instagram, Twitter, they're like kind of sad that he actually left. So he has some injury concerns, but if he stays healthy, could be pretty solid. And then I don't know who else is going to be there, but we do have a lot of, young guys that maybe could fill that role and, overall hopefully play, better than we got last year, right? Because Danny Trevathan was not good last year. He didn't even play last year, really. Yeah. And then who was the other guy we had out there?
Ogletree.
On his name.
Alec Ogletree.
Alec Ogletree, yeah. he had a solid camp. He had like a really good preseason, and he was like okay at times during the regular season. But I think overall we desired a little bit more from the linebacker spot, and hopefully we get that this year.
Yeah, kind of like Rishab said, I don't have too many concerns with linebacker, primarily because you're not going to see that strong side backer on the field a whole lot. But I definitely think, when necessary, we do have the guys, maybe sort of a talent by committee, so to speak, as their strong side backer if we're going to check them in for run defense and whatnot. So I'm not too worried about it, but I am excited to see what Sanborn can become.
Another thought I had too is that kind of flipping that role as well is that Jaquan Brisker could always be that strong safety that comes down as a linebacker, and then what do? You bump over Eddie Jackson, you bring in DeAndre Houston Carson. That could be where a lot of that flexibility for re-signing him could bring in too, because I think Jaquan Brisker is very fast, very strong. His discipline in the NFL about attacking those holes will be something that needs to be addressed probably in the preseason. But that could be another thing where not just Travis Gibson and Charles Snowden coming off the line of scrimmage, they could bring Jaquan Brisker down and kind of act like that. There was this player on the Cardinals for a while back that kind of played that role a lot, and that's who I always think of. So that could always be a possibility too.
Are you thinking of Deion Buchanan?
That's Deion Buchanan.
Yep.
Coolest name ever. I can't believe I forgot it.
I agree with that too. That's definitely a possibility where you can bring Brisker up in the box, and we're seeing a lot more of that in the NFL today. Most of these safeties practically play linebacker, like Derwin James. Jamal Adams, I know, was like trying to petition to get paid like a linebacker. So Jaquan Brisker is definitely a guy that has that type of potential to do that. And I think I saw reports that they were at least experimenting with it in OTAs and whatnot, and I'm sure we will see it. We'll see it, absolutely. So I'm excited to see what the defense is going to look like, very much so. And obviously the offense is going to be great as well, or not great, but exciting to say the least, because it'll be, at the very least, it's going to be a competent offense. And something I want to hit on real quick with the defense, a lot of people, kind of like I mentioned, were flaming Poles for taking two defenders early. We took Brisker and we took Gordon over a guy like George Pickens or Sky Moore or like Bernard Raymond on the offensive line or Zach Tom or whoever you wanted. And I really think people have forgotten the importance of a solid defense at the very least for a young quarterback, because if Fields is trying to put up 30, 40 points a game, that's going to fuck up his development big time. But if we're staying in games because our defense is getting stops, you can establish the run, you can get rhythm throws going, which is big for young quarterbacks and their confidence. So I think that this whole media narrative that Poles screwed the pooch on his first draft is absolutely goofy. I thought he had a fantastic draft. He kept it simple. Not only did he address two of our biggest positions in need, because Lord knows our secondary was god-awful last year. Thank God Kendall Vildor isn't a starter anymore. He got a receiver that Fields, sat down and watched tape with him and said, hey, this is a guy I like a lot. And he addressed the offensive line, got a bunch of guys. He got Treston Ebner, who is a good backfield threat. Honestly, he's like another receiver out of the backfield. And then, you got Trenton Gill, which I don't know jack shit about, but it's a punter. So I can't imagine he's going to be too bad, although it does hurt my soul to see. I think it hurts my soul more to see Pat O'Donnell go to Green Bay than it did Adrian Amos, because I had such like an emotional attachment to Pat O'Donnell. Like, we share a birthday, and my man turned around and went to Green Bay. Heartbroken, absolutely heartbroken. But
and remember, Pat O'Donnell was the strongest guy in the room.
Yeah, he had like the best combine for a punter ever.
Yeah.
His combine was insane. Like, I think he benched like as much as, I don't remember who it was, like a outside linebacker. I don't remember which one it was. It was like Clowney or Mack or something. Yeah. And they had the same 40 time as like Odell Beckham. Like, my man's combine, he should be the greatest athlete to ever live.
But Pat O'Donnell was underutilized in Chicago. He should have been used more. Without
Put
him
at linebacker.
I mean, I'm not against it. And another thing too that's going to be very much missed with Pat O'Donnell is his capability as a holder, because I feel like that's something that goes very, very underappreciated in the NFL nowadays, is how important a good holder is. And I was talking about that on the Packers episode when I was talking to Packers fans about the importance of having a good holder. Obviously, we saw how abysmal their special teams was last year, and they were bringing up Mason Crosby missing a bunch of kicks, and I think it was Theo Ash brought up that he thought it was a holder issue, so obviously I chimed in and let them know about Pat O'Donnell. So that's something that I think could be concerning for Cairo this year, if we even want to touch on the special teams, is working with a new holder, which maybe I'm overestimating how much that really matters, but I do think it does matter.
Listen, I'm a firm believer in special teams is just as important as like any other position. Because if you think about it in like the history of the league, the team I usually go to is I think it was like the 2010, 2011 Chargers, where they had the number 1 ranked offense, number 1 ranked defense, but they had like the last ranked special teams and didn't even make the playoffs. Like, it's not an exciting thing to watch, and it's not something you like an average fan will like pay attention to, but it means a lot. Like, also, like with Green Bay in the playoffs last year, they did not play well enough to win that game. Don't get me wrong. Aaron Rodgers did not have a very good game. But they also, their defense was insane, and the only reason they lost is because they had, like, the punt touchdown, like, bad field position from, like,
Talanoa Hufanga, baby.
Special teams matters a lot more than, like, most people, like, give it credit for.
Yeah,
I mean,
I wouldn't be too concerned about it because I think Trevor Siemian and Nathan Peterman, they got a lot of experience doing just that. So I think we're okay.
I mean, hopefully. Which that's something we just completely glanced over. Nathan fucking Peterman is on our roster. How has that not been brought up yet? Yeah. Like, we should be Super Bowl favorites right now. I don't understand the hang up with that. Right. No, but in all seriousness, I mean, as Bears fans, we know the importance of special teams. I'm not going to bring up the game, but we all know the game. We all know what happened. And having a bad special teams unit, or at least a subpar one with a bad kicker, was part of that. And now, thankfully, we have Cairo, who, for the most part, has been fairly consistent. He almost broke the NFL record for consecutive field goals made until Nagy fucked him over and made him kick like a 70-yarder against Pittsburgh. And then he kind of lost his confidence after that. That might have been Nagy's biggest sin. Like, he
missed like...
No, go ahead.
He missed like 3 in a row after that is what I was going to add.
Yeah, he fucked up his confidence. But we had so many kicker woes since Robbie left. And then we get Cairo, and he's making everything, and we're all hyped up. We're like, this is our guy. We got Cairo Curry. He's the kicker of the future, so to speak.
Cairo Curry.
And then Nagy said, no, you're going to kick a 70-yarder, and you're going to miss it. I don't give a shit. I want to look like I care about this game. And then Cairo sucked for like 3 games after. And his confidence level was all over the place. Like I said, that might have been Nagy's biggest sin as the Bears head coach.
I think one of the biggest sins of that last regime is letting Robbie go in the first place.
Was that because Pace? I thought that was before Pace.
I think it was a little bit before. Okay. Yeah, I don't remember if it was right as he got here.
I think it was Pace. Pretty sure that
might have been his first year.
Yeah, like that. I mean, maybe it just didn't mean much to him because he just didn't understand what Robbie was. But I mean, he was not even close to falling off at that point. And then I'm so happy that he ended up beating the Packers. Then you had that famous clip of Jimmy Garoppolo walking up to him. He was like, "Yeah, man, explicative the Packers." You know, they were like, "Yeah, we beat them." But I mean, like, I could just imagine if Robbie was there during that playoff game against the Eagles, we would have never had an issue.
I dream of that every single night. I'm not shitting you. Robbie being there would have been perfect.
You guys think we go all the way in 2018 if we make that kick?
Yes. Call me biased. I don't give a shit.
He had the Rams number that year.
Yeah.
Roquan's first career pick.
We would have definitely beat the Rams. The only thing is, like, would we beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it would have been a defensive... No, listen. It would have been a defensive showdown, just like against the Rams. And we had the best defense in football. I wouldn't have had it. Yeah. My only concern with that would have been like Belichick feasting on a young quarterback. But our defense was better. If it was the same type of game where it was going to be defense versus defense, I'm fully confident we could have won that game. Although the only downside to that is Pace and Nagy are probably still with Chicago, and Trubisky's probably still our quarterback. So you get a Super Bowl win, but long term you're suffering. So
one thing I want to add about the Robbie Gould thing, which you guys might crucify me for this, at the time of like releasing Robbie Gould, I don't think it was as horrid as a move as it seems. Yeah, 2020 or like what? What's the thing? Vision. I don't know. Hindsight's 2020. There we go.
Yeah.
Robbie Gould that season was very, very bad. I don't know how well you remember this. I don't even know if I'm remembering it 100% correctly. I just remember there was a few games where we lost because we were bad at the time, don't get me wrong. But we lost because he was set up for game-winning field goals and missed them, and overall had a pretty down year. Now, with that being said, if you take like that and then moved to like the Cody Parkey year in 2018. Cody Parkey shouldn't have been our kicker by the time of the wild card game. That year we lost multiple games because of him too, and we just like, oh yeah, we'll just move past it. We'll keep going with him. So like I feel like if you're going to release Robbie Gould, you should release Cody Parkey midseason anyways. But again, hindsight's 2020. I wish we would have kept Robbie Gould. He's at least a Chicago legend, and he would have been better than Cody Parkey.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we pretty much wrapped up the rosters. Is there anything else you guys want to bring up? Anything at all?
Do we want to go over like general stuff, like what record?
Oh yeah. I completely forgot. Yep. Yeah, let's do that. So I don't know. We can kind of go around starting with Rishab. What do you think the ceiling, floor, and then your actual prediction for the record will be?
Okay, so I made a video about this, but I think my ceiling was 9 wins, and then my floor was like, I think it was 6 wins, I said, and then my actual prediction is 8 wins, which I know I'm biased. I'm a Bears fan. I'm obviously going to be a little bit more optimistic, but I really feel like if you look throughout this roster, like we've just spent all this time going over the roster. On some, in some areas, we've definitely upgraded. Like on the offense, I feel like in the receiving core, we upgraded based on what we had out there last year. I know Al Robinson is really good, but he didn't really give a shit last year.
Yeah.
If you look at the offensive line, a bunch of question marks, obviously, but we're kind of hoping, this coaching staff with Luke Getsy, they can make us play better than what the talent is. And I think, especially if you look at our schedule, right? Like our schedule is so damn easy this year. I know it's impossible to like go from year to year and like predict how teams are going to be different, but we got some really easy teams on the schedule, which I feel like we should at least be able to hopefully, go 500. And I'm also like a big fan of Justin Fields, big believer in Justin Fields, like you guys all are. So I think that with his play, hopefully taking a step up, even if it's not shown in the stats per se, that should be good enough to hopefully win 8 games. I don't think we're going to beat Green Bay this year. I didn't predict that just yet, but it should be more competitive than, it was majority of last year.
Yeah. All right, Lucas, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I didn't put out anything on this just yet, but I'm thinking that I think the ceiling is probably 8 wins. So what does that make that? 8, 9? Is that how the new thing shakes out? I can't really remember.
Yeah, 8, 9.
I think that's probably going to be the ceiling. But I said this on Twitter to somebody. Someone asked me like, what is your what's a positive season to you? And I said for me, a lot of it comes down to the eye game. I think this year the word that's going to define this season is progress. Is that it's progress on defense. It's progress on with Justin Fields and his development. It's progress with our new regime and Eberflus getting into the flow of things. I think if we see positive progression along the defense and the offense, making the strides, and even if there's some frustrations and there's some obstacles along the way, like dropped games and heartbreaking moments, like as long as overall after the season I come away, I'm like, yeah, we definitely dropped the ball at some points, but like if I can tell myself by the end of the season that next year we are absolutely going to the playoffs, that is a win for this season for me. So I would say 8 wins is probably my ceiling, and I would say the bottom is just like we can't get our wheels out of the mud. There's a lot of adjustments to the first year. Justin Fields doesn't really make a leap, God forbid. I would say probably 5 or 6 wins, like Rashid was saying, is probably more in line for me.
All right, Jarett.
Okay, and for the best for last, obviously. I kind of am agreeing with both of them. I think our team, without a doubt, should be better than last year. Our defense, I really like Eberflus. I think with the intensity that they're going to be playing with, will be better. Our offense, there's no way it can possibly be worse. I know that there was statistically worse ranked offenses, but if you actually watch the game, it cannot get worse than that, I promise you. I think that with the scheme, it'll be better. we're not going to be a great team. I think floor, like worst case scenario, like Justin Fields doesn't take a huge step forward. Our offense, is just as bad. And our interior defensive line, shows to be a big hole. I think we win like 5 games. I think most games we win. We're not going to beat those elite teams. We're not there yet. I'm not going to be biased and say that. We're just not. I think we win 9 games just based on the fact that we have such an easy schedule. I think there's a lot of beatable opponents within the schedule. I would probably say 7 to 9. If I have to pick one number, I would say probably 8. I could see us, based on the NFC being so weak, sneaking into a playoff spot, but I don't see us going any farther than like the wild card, and that's a big stretch if we even make the playoffs.
Yeah, I unfortunately, I think I'm a little bit more pessimistic than you guys. First of all, Rishab brought up the ease of our schedule. And, on paper, going off winning percentages of last year, we do have one of the easier schedules in football. But we have teams on our schedule that were bad last year that I think are actually going to take a bigger leap than we would this year, kind of like the Jets and the Lions. I have high hopes for both of those teams. So I think at the very best, we split the series with the Lions, and I don't think we're going to beat the Jets. I would say my ceiling for us is probably about 7 wins. I don't see us getting much more than that. Our floor is probably 3 to 4, and I think I've gone on record a couple of times saying I think the Bears are going to win about 5-6 games. I think that's a fair estimate, and that's not because I think the team's going to look bad. I'm with Lucas in the sense that this is a progress year. It's not going to all click right away, which is my big thing. I think the first couple of weeks of the year we're going to see some growing pains. We're going to see guys trying to kind of figure things out. And then by mid-season, back half of the season, they'll start to really blend with the offense, blend with the defense, figure things out, and we'll see a big rise towards the end of the year. And then we'll be able to carry that momentum as well as, we've mentioned before, $100+ million in cap room, first round pick for the first time since, the Fields year, 2021, 2020, whatever the hell, we'll be able to be a lot better next year. Next year, I think we're a playoff team. Next year, I think we can actually make some noise as long as Fields looks good this year, as long as the offense looks competent, as long as the defense blends well and some of the young guys over there can take a step forward. I'm happy. I think the Bears will be better than their record will reflect for that reason. Because like I said, I think there's going to be a big upswing towards the end of the year when everyone's kind of set in stone, figured out what their role is, what their job is, things like that. But record-wise, I think we're probably going to be a little disappointed, which, will work out because we'll get a top 10 pick and maybe we hear Jackson Smith and the Jigba going to Chicago, which would be the dream. But unless you guys have anything else you want to add, anything you want to plug even, I'll let you guys go ahead and plug your stuff if you want.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed.
Go for it. Go for it.
Go for it, Jarett.
Go for it.
So I am starting a YouTube channel talking about specifically the Bears. I have started it years ago, and then I posted a video, and then a year later posted a video, and then a year later posted a video. I'm trying to get onto that, consistently, but it is JRice Sports. And then the group page I'm a part of, the other guys aren't Bears fans, so it's not always talking about the Bears. Is a cool sports guy.
All right. Make sure you send me the links to that stuff so I can put it in the description. Rishab, I've got your links. Obviously, you're the big man on campus here. Not to, fire you up too much, but yeah.
You know what it is.
Yeah.
Everyone knows.
So that's it. If you guys don't have anything else you want to bring up, that's going to wrap up this episode. Thank you all for watching.
You mind if I plug?
Go for it. My bad. I didn't mean to go over.
Oh, it's okay. I just want to let these guys go first.
Yeah,
I'm a content producer for my local ABC station over here. I'm starting to get into the sports department. So I usually work with the sports reporters to put out stuff. I usually cover we do go national. I cover the Bears. I'll cover the Colts. I'll cover the Titans because we're in the tri-state area. So please go to give that a look. That's at WSIL ABC News 3. And then on Twitter, you'll find a lot of my stuff. I'm usually replying to stuff about video games and TV and in sports. You can see all my Marvel and Star Wars stuff, Pokemon stuff up here, and that's at Masonite22. That's Mason ITE 22. So give these guys a follow. They're legends, I say.
All right. Well, like I was saying, that wraps this one up. Thank you guys so much for coming on. It was a ton of fun. We talked for damn 2 hours. We went for over 2 hours, which isn't a surprise. I mean, I'm a Bears fan. I'm fine with it. Just to put it out there, our shortest episode so far was the Packers. Our longest has been the Bears, so I feel like that's pretty fitting. That's pretty on brand.
Gotta win.
Yeah,
win.
Finally. But yeah, that about wraps it up. Make sure you tune in. It'll be the day after this, or 2 days after this one's uploaded. We're doing every other day, going to the AFC North next, probably starting out with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But yeah, that's it.